language needs to be included too.
Where's the map? Where's that stuff?
Well, it's not part of this application,
They
so
gave
that
us
old
the
PUD is
discretion.
the historic
Yes,
stuff.
and to be neutral.
Because they're just asking to take this back to general D2 zoning.
I know, but it's up against that. Okay, that's fine. I'll ask a question in a minute. Thanks,
Good
buddy.
afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Marion County Community Redevelopment Agency Board. If you'll all rise with me, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and Madam Clerk, if we could please have roll call and proof of publication.
Chairman Stone,
Here.
Vice Chairman Moore.
Here.
Commissioner Bryant. Here. Commissioner Gold. Here. Commissioner Zalek.
Here.
I have proof of publication of legal ad number A000954237 entitled Notice of Change to 2019 Regular Meeting Schedule, Marion County Community Redevelopment Agency, published in the Star Banner newspaper on June 12, 2019.
Great, thank you so much. And we'll start with the adoption of the minutes for the March 19th.
moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Bryant. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And we'll start with Mr. Risen giving us the detail of the scheduled items we'll be discussing today.
Good afternoon. This is our CRA meeting for the Marion County Community Redevelopment Agency. This will be focusing on the Silver Spring CRA, which is currently only our CRA in Marion County. Our number of items today are some informational items. The first item, however, will be our request for approval and submittal for the revised preliminary Silver Spring CRA budget. We did receive the final notification of the property values for the CRA. It was an increase larger than we were anticipating for our estimate. So it will actually add approximately $11,000 to the CRA budget. So staff is recommending an adjustment to the budget to reflect that increase.
Thank you, Mr. Risen. I'll bring it to the board for consideration.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Bryant?
Just, Chris, if you can refresh my memory, we had some discussion about possibly providing some funding for for extra law enforcement within the CRA.
Yes, that would be the professional services item.
Okay.
Which is the Marion County Sheriff's Office Community Policing. It's the $94,000 amount. What we've done is looked at the reduction in the hour time. It's the 4-hour shifts, 5 days per week, with a small increase because on occasion if an event occurs at the end of the shift and the deputy has to carry over for processing or booking, we've had a little overages. So that's where we've done the $94,000. If the commission ultimately, or the agency does want to ultimately increase that amount, we can. We have some budgetary room for that, for instance. But that's what we've kind of looked at is it would be a reduction from our current service level, which is 5-hour shifts, 5 hours a day. But again, if we go with that standard, it would be a base amount of $104,000.
Okay, that's fine. I just completely missed that line item.
No
I was
problem.
focused on all the smaller ones. So,
And-
thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions concerning the budget as it's been proposed?
I'll move the budget.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion, any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Next, we have a request for approval for the Silver Spring CRA facade and improvement grant.
And actually, this request, staff had been recommending approval. The applicant, however, did withdraw the request. That's the para sheet that you have there to your left. As they had concerns given the values that were involved with the request that they were submitting. We did have only one active application that was submitted. We did have a community meeting regarding this. We sent out notices. We actually had approximately 6 attendees, 3 of which were all from the same business, which actually was the guest house treatment facility, however. So we have not had a great deal of response at this point in time. The applicant who has withdrawn actually brought up a point which from a staff level we do think is probably a valid reasonable approach to maybe do more of a mini grant type activity for certain particular things and not be so intense in follow-up requirements because some of those requirements do end up adding to those costs. So from a staff standpoint, we think that might actually be a valid option and a potential for the agency at this point in time. If you'd like to, we can potentially allow this meeting to continue for 30 days before our August planning and zoning meeting. And we can maybe bring back a set of recommendations on those and amounts and values that could potentially be done. And actually, in talking with our sheriff representation, they pointed out one of the concerns that they do encounter in the area is the sites that are forested, that are full of underbrush. They can't see within those areas. The deputies have concerns when they try to visit in those areas for trespassing. So one grant option we thought was funding underbrushing to clear the underbrush growth, so you can see when people are trespassing, littering, loitering, and other activities, which might be helpful. So that might be something appealing to other property owners as well, to get those properties cleared out to help with the homeless camps and so on.
That's a very reasonable request.
I do too. Having bought a piece of property that dealt with this issue, that is exactly what stopped the encampment that had been there for many years. So I am very much in favor of that. I think I've got two others. Any other comments? You good with that? So we'll continue this item, and if you could bring that back for the next meeting, that would be most appropriate.
And that's where I would look for you all to formally, rather than adjourn the meeting,
Continue it.
continue
We'll
it to that
continue
meeting.
it. That's the theme for the day.
And Ms. Thompson is here available if you'd like to speak with her any, or just to let you know.
Well, since, Ms. Thompson, since you've made the trip here, I certainly welcome you if you'd like to have any input on this. Sure.
Yes.
Give,
Name my name and
Yes,
Pamela
please.
Thompson, 5361 East Silver Springs Boulevard, Silver Springs, Florida, 34488, owner of the Event Warehouse. So, good afternoon. I did submit my application based on the application that was available, and after going through that, and as being a small business, the requirements, and I know you guys do this, but you handle so many different things. The requirements are quite intense, and so it requires a large amount of financial investment. And as a small business owner, although I do want to improve my building even more, it does take away from my daily operations. It takes away from actually providing personnel, providing jobs, because what we could do on a smaller scale with having the 5 facade requirements, even though the application doesn't exclude you from in the future trying to do additional things, think about your home. Once you do 5 outside improvements, what are you going to do again? What other 5 things could you come up with again for an application? So how it's currently written, it's kind of a one-time shot. And it ends up being a large amount of investment. I've also worked with and spoke with Lieutenant Carlton at the Sheriff's Office, and one of the major things that we think, I think the community, as well as you guys, think that cameras and lighting are very important. So I have made a suggestion. You have a letter, I believe, in your packet, and if we could possibly do a mini grant that would include 1 facade item, and we can include lighting and cameras, I think it would be really beneficial for being able to, not only my personal business, but where my business is right on the boulevard. I mean, it obviously is going to capture people as they walk down the street, go across the street, if there is something that happens, next door or in the vicinity, driving. And, recently I've had a couple of issues in the back of my building that people have been back there loitering and trespassing and doing some criminal mischief at night. But I think it's beneficial for everyone if we could possibly consider doing something like that to get some cameras and lights in the area.
We think it's a great suggestion, and Mr. Eisen is going to come back at our next meeting with some proposals for us to put some parameters on how we can do those small mini grants.
And I also think you could get more, I know we haven't had a lot of attendance with our CRA meetings, but I think by trying to do something smaller, maybe a little less intimidating on the application, that we can get some more businesses like the pawn shop and maybe some of the auto places to do the same thing, because they're along that corridor and they have a lot of foot traffic and bicycle traffic, and We've seen some gang members that have moved into the area that are being seen at night and early morning hours, and we want to definitely keep that to a minimum.
Very good. Well, thank you for, yes, Commissioner Gold?
I know you've probably seen Sheriff's Office kind of stepped up their activity a little bit, and there's been some arrests in there. Does it still need a lot of attention?
I don't know what the stats are. I have talked to Lieutenant Curtis, and I know that he and Mr. Eisen, and I believe you have an update on that. One of the things that we did discuss with him was that in regards to it being a detail and that deputies don't come out and just do a lot of traffic stops. Not that traffic stops aren't important, but you could sit there on 40 and you could stop traffic all day long, and that's not gonna do anything for the area. So what I have requested in working with Lieutenant Curtis and with Mr. Eisen is that they do make contact with businesses, and that they are, behind the buildings, and, the Steak and Shake, now that it's vacant, being in those parking lots and things like that. So I know their schedules vary. I have not seen them a lot.
Well,
But
they
that's
haven't
not a-
started the detail yet, have they?
Oh, yeah, they've
they
been
started?
doing it for several
They've been
months.
operating since April.
All right.
Yeah, so I know that they're out there, and I know that they're doing things, and that they do have activity, so it's been really good. But in the last 5 nights, 2 nights, I've had someone behind my building in my trash can emptying everything in my back parking lot, And I mean, thank goodness it's not damage, but I mean it is, activity back there that no one really needs to be back there. They tend to use the back of my property to stay off of 40 and to travel in between the motels, jump the fences and go in the woods and things like that. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is
While
a,
we're on that.
yes.
So, hey, Chris, can you just make sure code enforcement, I have had some complaints already about the Steak and Shake too. It's getting trash all over it. So.
I will note the Steak and Shake is technically inside the city of Ocala, so we will coordinate with their code enforcement.
That part of the Walmart is in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's right. Yeah, if you'll ask them, that'd be great.
I will.
Thank you. We can see a little bit of activity in our package. For a 2-week period, it does show 90 traffic stops. 9 misdemeanor charges, 4 felonies, 8 arrests, and 4 warnings issued. So, they definitely got the traffic stops going.
Yes, and I do have up on the screen both the April and the May information, which the May is also in your package as well. The June information is still being completed out and compiled by the Sheriff's Office. They've given a general statistical chart, but not the formalized memo form like this.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll look for you to bring something back for us, Chris, Mr. Eisen, for the cameras, lighting, and underbrush clearance.
Yes.
Okay. And then moving on to C, request for direction regarding the Silver Spring CRA master plan.
And this is an item for discussion and input from the agency. Just to let you know, from a staff level, we did submit for a Florida Department of Economic Opportunity Technical Assistance Grant. However, we did not receive one. They actually made the formal announcements of all the grants yesterday, and Marion County was not one of the recipients. So this is where the agency and the Board of County Commissioners have looked at focusing and creating a full, true master plan for the CRA. We're preparing from a staff level to go out with an RFQ that would then commence with the start of the fiscal year in October. So we're looking at formulating all of that. We have some points, so that's where we did provide to you for reference what was submitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity for their referencing purposes. The components that we are looking at least, are market study to help identify the markets for the CRA, individual and priority redevelopment areas, visual and virtual renderings for the area, which would include 2D, 3D, and animated versions to help people visualize and experience what would be anticipated to come to the area. A capital improvements plan and a schedule for a 5-year and a 20-year schedule to match up with the life of the CRA. Potential comprehensive plan amendments that we may want to pursue, and land development code amendments that we might want to pursue. What part of it would also include doing a current conditions analysis for the area, which is much more extensive than the very generalized analysis that was done for the general CRA master plan. and also coordinating all the different agency plans, FDOT, Marion County Utilities, stormwater planning, and so on. And of course, conducting stakeholder meetings throughout the community to formulate all of these activities. And so at this point, we didn't know if there was anything in specific that you all might be interested in as an addition to these lists or not. So,
I'll bring it back to the board. Do you have any additional comments or anything else you'd like to see included in that?
and if you don't have anything right now, if something does come to mind, please, by all means, if you can contact staff.
So Chris, how soon would you need any feedback on this?
We anticipate to finish formulation of the RFP request or RFQ request within the month of August at least, and then be able to put it out so that it goes out in advance so we can start it up there.
And when is our next meeting?
Well, if we do the continuation, it would end up being the August date, which I'm afraid I've completely blanked on.
The third,
The 20th, I believe.
the third Tuesday?
I was looking, yeah, the third Tuesday.
Okay, can you give me that date? We'll get it.
August 20th.
August the 20th. Okay. So again, you need information from us prior to then.
Definitely by then, if that would be appreciated, because we would like to, say, early in August, put out the formal RFQ requirement.
Okay. So how about if we have anything that you'd like to see added or included, just contact Mr. Eisen personally on
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
unless you have anything today that you want to provide, any direction. Otherwise, continue on with what you have. Okay, very good. And next, we have an update on amendments to the Florida statutes.
Just for briefing purposes, the CRA requirements were amended by the state legislature. Some of the items which are technical requirements, actually you will be able to satisfy as county commissioners in your other role. One of which is a requirement now that CRA commissioners must now have 4 hours of ethics training. However, you as commissioners, because that's a requirement, you are able to meet that need, for instance. And other requirements do come back to the annual reporting requirements and auditing requirements. And then there are some coordinated requirements with the special district requirements that also were adjusted a bit this year, because those are also being worked on by the state legislature. They have created a system now where they're pushing special districts that have not been operating effectively or correctly, that they are automatically dissolved by their governmental agencies that are in charge. So this is largely briefing purposes. It doesn't substantially affect anything at this point in time. It'll just be reflected in as we do updates in our audit and our annual reporting. And I'll be coordinating that more with our finance offices as well.
Very good, thank you. And then in conclusion, we've got an update on the special detail.
And that is the special detail that was commenced by the Sheriff's Office. We began in mid-April, went through April, May, and June. In fact, I have the June general statistics. At least I thought I did. I don't think it's saved correctly. Actually, I have not received those yet, so those are being finalized right now. Also, the staff members from the Sheriff's Office who are operating and maintaining the special detail are here, for instance, if you happen to have any other questions or any information or directional items that you might want to provide. Otherwise, this information is here for your reference.
So I've got a question. I'm looking at the times that are being worked, and a lot of it is a 6 to 11 shift. Would it be better to have a later shift? I see there were a few when they started that were 7 to 12. I would imagine that a lot of the activity that's concerning to business owners and the residents in the area probably goes on later in the evening, later in the night, and early into the next morning.
And
How was the shift determined, I
Yeah.
guess?
we've left that determination to the deputy, to the program itself, to ensure that we don't create an expectation of when they will be there, so that people know, okay, if they're going to be here at this certain time frame, we don't show up. So we actually wanted to leave that flexibility. Part of it too is the Sheriff's Office in terms of availability of deputies to actually fill those slots, because they are a voluntary filling for that special detail.
I
But if we'd like to-
completely understand that thought process, but can we ask about doing some later? I mean, there's a couple that have gone later, but for the most part, most of them are done by 11 in the evening.
So you're looking at more overnight type.
I mean, I think
Shifts.
it would be a good idea.
Okay.
That's my thought, but I'm certainly not an expert, so I would ask the experts.
Okay.
Well, and once we get those camera units installed, possibly with those mini grants, that may also help dictate when would be a better time for the shift work to take place.
Yes, and that was one of the items that was emphasized by Lieutenant Curtis. He said that the surveillance cameras are something that they love to utilize as a surveillance tool and an investigative tool to help them investigate activities. So the more cameras that can be put eyes on the street, the better it is for their operations.
Okay. So maybe one of the things that we look at too when we're talking about our master plan is, I really think that it's probably more beneficial to the community that we address all of these safety and security issues before we do anything else, and try to get a lot of the stuff that's happening within that area under control.
Absolutely.
I just think that would be a more prudent use of the CRA dollars at this time.
Okay.
I would certainly support that wholeheartedly.
Correct.
Yeah. There'll be lots of time for other things once that gets taken care of.
And we can look at that, maintaining that line item within our budget for the coming years.
Very good. Well, if we have nothing else on this, then we will continue this meeting to the August 20th date at
1:50 p.m. I think should be.
1:50.
if you wanna-
1:50 will be fine.
I'll move to continue.
Yes.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Zalek, second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we've got just a couple moments and we'll go into our zoning.
Thank you.
Trying to do it subtly.
Just
Get out the gavel and just gavel us.
You'll have that opportunity.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the zoning portion of our meeting. I'd like to ask you to stand with me for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if we could have roll call and then proof of publication, please.
Chairman Stone?
Here.
Vice Chairman Moore?
Here.
Commissioner Bryant? Here. Commissioner Gold?
Here.
Commissioner Zalek?
Here.
I have proof of display ad entitled Notice of Change of Land Use, Marion County Comprehensive Plan on an ordinance of the Board of the County Commissioners of Marion County, Florida, adopting the following large-scale amendment to the future land use map series of the Marion County Comprehensive Plan, published in the Star Banner newspaper on June 10th, 2019. And I have a proof of legal ad number A0009550007 entitled Notice of Intent to Consider Adoption of an Ordinance, published in the Star Banner newspaper on July 1st, 2019.
Great, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you being with us today. I would ask if you have anything that is electronic that could go off during the meeting, that you would please set that to vibrate or to turn it off. At any rate, if you do need to have a conversation with anyone in the audience or on that device, if you could please take that out into the foyer. You'll still be able to hear all the proceedings going on in the auditorium, but that will just keep your conversation from being a part of our meeting today. And to get us started, I'm going to invite our attorney to set the stage for the day and give us the procedures.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a number of items on the agenda, 9 items that are on the consent agenda that will be read off individually in a few moments. The idea of the consent agenda is these items are matters as to which, as of this moment, the board has not received any objections, either orally or in writing, as to these items. If you're here today and you have either a question about any of these first 9 items, 14A1 to 14A9, or if you have an objection, when these items are read off individually, raise your hand and we'll pull that off of the consent agenda and address it individually. If no one has any questions or objections about any item on the consent agenda, then the board will make a single motion to adopt all of those items with one motion. If you're the applicant for any of these items on the consent agenda and the board has passed its motion to approve everything, then your day is over, your item has been approved, and you don't have to stay around for the rest of the meeting. In item 14B, we've got DRC, Development Review Committee waiver requests. And then in 14C, 1 through 9, we have a number of individual planning and zoning items. So all of these items, well, not all of them, the waiver request and the rezoning matters and the special use permit matters and the reasonable accommodation matter, all of those come before the board as a quasi-judicial matter. That means the board is sitting before you like a court. And so the idea there is when you make your presentation to the board, it's important for you to not just give them whatever your opinion is, that I like this or I don't like this or my neighbors don't like it or something like that. That really doesn't help the board, and that's not what's considered by the courts to be competent evidence. If you're here in opposition to any of these matters, what's important for the board to hear is factual information that you know about this application. There's going to be too many trucks, heavy trucks going down my road because of this rezoning, or there's going to be fumes from the operation or too much noise. there's not a large enough buffer between me and this special use permit request. Any factual information that you have, that's what you need to bring to the board. One other thing, I'll give you a little hint, and sometimes we have people come up to the podium and they spend about half of their time to talk complaining about, well, I didn't get notice about this until yesterday. But you are in fact here, so I would say don't waste your time complaining about notice. Use your time talking about whatever the substance of your concern is, and that'll be a lot more effective for you. We also have some large-scale comprehensive, or at least one large-scale comprehensive land use plan amendment, and that's when the board acts in a legislative capacity. They're sitting in a policy-making role concerning the long-range development plan for the county, unincorporated county, and you can bring to the board's attention anything that you think is a legitimate public purpose concern regarding that large-scale amendment. The one I'm looking at is 19L02, the Shore Sand Mine LLC. That's the large-scale amendment that's on the agenda. So typically we'll have the applicant come up at the beginning and explain what their application is. After they sit down, then any members of the public will have an opportunity to come up to either one of the podiums. And if there are several of you, we encourage one person to come up here and another person to come to the other podium so that we'll save time. We'll have somebody ready to go as soon as the other person stops talking. And after all the members of the public have spoken, you sit back down. Then any issues that you've raised, the applicant will have an opportunity to come back up and answer or respond to the issues that have been raised by the public. And after that, the public hearing will be closed and it will go to the board for their deliberations. Once the public hearing is closed, there's no more input from the public. So whatever's on your mind, make sure you get it out while you're standing here at the podium, because that's your opportunity to be heard. I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mentor, for going through those processes so intricately. If you forget while you're here, I'll happily remind you. There will be a set of lights on the podium as well. When it's green, you've got time to talk, and you'll be limited to 2 minutes in your comments. Once it begins to turn yellow, I'll ask that you start to wrap that up, and I believe that's about a 30-second wrap-up time before your light turns red, and we'll ask you to please have concluded your comments by then. So to get us started, we've got Sam Martzoff, who is our Director of Growth Management, and so we'll start with the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sam Martzoff, Marion County Growth Services Director. The 9 items that are on the consent agenda, I'm going to read each item off, and at the end of that, if you wish to have any of those items pulled or have questions on any of them, please let us know at the end. 14A1 is 19S03, Todd B. Rudiani, and there's a companion item, zoning change. 14A2 is 190701Z, again, Todd B. Rudiani. Trustee, it's a rezoning from PUD to B2.
We do have someone who
wishes to have
has
those
pulled that.
Alrighty. And 14A3 is 190702Z. It's a zoning change, Juan Munoz, and it's from A1 to R4. 14A4 is 190705Z. It's Obeded and Ivania Bosch. It's a rezoning from R4 to R1. And there's a companion special use permit to that application, 14A5, 190706 SU. Again, Mr. and Ms. Bosch. It's a special use permit in the R1. 6 is 14A6, 190708 SU. It's a modification to a special use permit for Elaine Despato. 14A7 is 190709 SU, Sandra Kimball. It's Wolves Den Ranch Canine Special Use Permit. And Madam Chair, we need to pull that one. We received a late letter from a neighboring property. 14A8 is 1907-10 SU Beverly Tyndall Crumpler, and that is a special use permit A1. And finally, 14A9 is 1907-12 SU Fort McCoy Investments LLC. It's a modification to their special use permit. Other than A1, 2, and A7, does anybody want to have any of those pulled?
I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, 89 too. I have a couple questions.
So we'll be pulling 14A1, 14A2, 14A7, and 14A9.
I'll move the remainder of the consent.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant to move for approval the remainder of the consent with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We'll start with 14A1 and 14A2. So do we have the applicant with us? And anyone who was in the other list that we just approved, you're welcome to leave. Those items have been approved. Thank you for being with us today. So, Mr.
Madam
Reisen.
Chair, perhaps we just should find out if somebody just had a question or if they were actually opposed to it.
Well, that's a great idea. Do we have anyone who just has a question for 14A1 and 2, or are you opposed?
I have a general statement, a slight opposition to it.
Okay, that's fine, Mr. Morgan, then perhaps we should go through our process. So we'll start there. So, Mr. Reisen.
Okay. Chris Risen with Grow Services. This is a paired application with a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment and then a rezoning request to go with it. The request is for a site which is located off of Southwest 95th Street, east of Southwest 60th Avenue. This is the site which was previously part of a PUD for a 10-acre parcel. The northern portion of that original parcel is now part of the Freedom Crossing residential PUD to the north, and the southern portion of the property is currently commercially designated. So the application for the small-scale amendment is to convert a portion of the property from high-density residential to commercial to create a unified site for the southern portion of the property. The rezoning request then is to make all of that commercially designated area Zone B2, which would then be consistent with the properties to the west that then go towards the intersection and then turn north along 60th Avenue. This commercial area would then form a perimeter around the Freedom Crossings residential PUD, which is located north of this property, which is the subject of the request. Staff is recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and approval of the rezoning to B2.
Okay, so, and do we have the applicant with us? I see Mr. Rudiani. If you'd like to come forward and give us your comments and.
Todd Rudiani, 2441 Northeast 3rd Street, Suite 201, Ocala, Florida 34470.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Risen summarized it very well. The only thing that I like to add is that this 9-acre parcel, when it was originally land used, it was done under a land use blending overlay, which would allow for commercial and residential throughout the parcel as a mixed use project. So commercial and residential throughout the entirety. Chris, I think that's correct, right? With the land use blending overlay.
The mixture of the commercial and residential together.
So anywhere on the property, both commercial and residential would have been allowed. There is an existing berm on the east side of the property as well. So those are just two things that I'd like to point out, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rudiani. And to speak on this is Mr. Bob Morgan. Mr. Morgan, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, Bob Morgan, 11003 Southwest 128th Avenue, Dunellen, 34432. This zoning change is for just 7 acres, high density to commercial. It's not really a large piece of land. But as a friend used to say, you start to eat an elephant one bite at a time. I've consistently, over the last 6 years that I've lived here, and I've been coming here for 27 years, seen us move farmland to low-density residential. I've seen it then changed from residential low density to residential high density, and then residential high density to commercial. I see a domino effect here. We have people who say we need more housing, but we have all these people and because we have all these people moving here, yet and I see many uncompleted developments. I see many empty office buildings, empty shopping centers, and empty strip malls. I'd say it's hard to walk through this county or drive through this county and find a shopping center, strip mall that doesn't have at least one, if not many, empty commercial buildings. We've just completed a battle over limited access highways coming through our farmlands and through our housing developments. When someone buys a piece of land, they know what the zoning is and should buy it with those uses in mind. You don't buy a car with an automatic transmission and then take it to the dealership and tell them to put a stick shift in it. You sell that car and you buy one that is built for what you want to use it for, in this case, what it's zoned for, and then you use it for what it's zoned for. Many of you have children, and I'm sure you've never said yes to all of their requests. It's time to say no to some of these zoning requests. It's too late to address this particular parcel, and I'm not really objecting to this particular parcel. But there's still time for the commission to be good land stewards and turn down some of these zoning changes. I applaud some of your past actions, specifically the Ocala Ranches development that was very difficult and was planned for the 200 area. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. So, do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If so, I invite you to come forward now. If not, we'll bring it back to Mr. Rudiani to address the concerns that Mr. Morgan presented.
I guess what I'd like to say is I appreciate those concerns. I'm actually working on an adaptive reuse project right now, and I totally believe in infill. At this point, this site is infill, and we're in the middle of the hole in the donut, per se, of a large portion of residential and a commercial node. So that's essentially what we're trying to do here, is make it uniform for the community. So again, I appreciate your sentiments.
Thank you. Commissioner
I just have
Zala.
one suggestion. As we do that, the PUD has better buffering and it comes back to us. So I'm okay, and I'll move for the approval of both A1 and 2, with the caveat, though, that the buffering, what is it, type D?
Correct. Type D would require
gets
for
signed off
commercials
on a
and
developer's
agriculture.
agreement to make sure the buffer's correct. I consulted with the attorney just to make sure that was the correct move.
Okay. Mr. Rudiani.
Is that good?
Is this type D or type E?
Type D.
Type D.
It's a type D
It's
that's
what's
required.
required when you do commercial
So,
up
I mean,
against.
we would have to conform to that regardless, right? Unless we went for a variance?
That would be a
you want to ask
waiver
for a
request, but
variance.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Sure.
Second.
Okay. I've got a motion by Commissioner Zalek and a second by Commissioner Moore to move for approval with a type D buffer. And I hope that will suffice for Mr. Morgan as well. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. The other item that was pulled going in sequential order would be 14A7, which is Wolves Den Ranch K-9.
Good afternoon, Kim Dinkins, Growth Services. 14A7 is 190709 SU. It's Sandra Kimball, a special use permit for a kennel. And the email that we received today in opposition was related to the concern about noise from the dogs. The kennel has been operating for about 6 years already, and staff has also included conditions on the special use permit that we think would mitigate concerns about noise, specifically conditions number 10 and 11, limiting dogs being kept outside prohibiting dogs from being kept outside before 7 a.m. or after 10, and then not allowing kenneling or boarding except during times of active training and exercise.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Bryant?
And I'm just asking, I read through the agenda item, and we've had no complaints.
We've had no
They've been there
complaints.
for 6 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these practices that they're already doing?
They have already implemented a lot of these, all of the practices that have been identified in the conditions.
Thank you.
And Ms. Kimball is here if you have any questions for her. And I don't know if our objector is in the audience.
Okay. I'll ask the commission, would you like for the applicant to come forward and,
Let's just see if there's any, unless they want.
I'm just asking.
So, just Kim, if you could, so is there, I see the pictures, outdoor kennel and indoor kennel?
There's an outdoor kennel, and the
So
dogs
It's just restricting the time or the amount of
yes,
animals in the outside?
in the outside, yes, sir.
Okay.
So there isn't a limit. There is a limit on the number of dogs that can be on the
Right.
property, but it's really just those outside hours, I think, that the neighbor was concerned about.
I'll move for approval.
We gotta take
Well,
public
I
comment
do
first.
have, yes,
Yes, someone to speak?
I do.
Sorry.
That's okay. We have Susan, I'll let you give your last name when you get here. If you'd like to come forward. I need you to come to the podium, please, and give your name and address for the record for the clerk.
I'm Susan Saltesiak, and 17815 Southeast 132nd Court,
Thank you.
Weirsdale.
Very good.
We actually own one of her puppies, and if you'll just kind of bear with me, I just wanted
You have 2 minutes.
you guys to be aware that she's not a puppy mill. This is a legitimate breeder, and she's very conscientious. As a new owner to a puppy, we went through vigorous phone interviews, personal interviews, review of past ownership history, our home and vet recommendations. We've also attended barbecues, puppy meet and greets, meeting new owners. They've always given us utmost care. And she's kept our dog. And when we get there, it's in great shape, happy, wonderful, and even a little bit spoiled when we get her back. So I just wanted you to be aware that, you know, in today's society with all the puppy mills, that it's not this, you know.
Well, we greatly appreciate you coming forward to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If so, I invite you to come forward. If not, I'll bring it back to the board.
Move second.
Yeah, I'll move for approval.
And second.
Thank you. I've got a motion by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Bryant to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And next we have 14A9. Yes, 14A9.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I pulled that just because I've had some concerns in the neighborhood here and there.
Okay.
And it is switching ownership, so I just want to go over all of the new stuff, and then, Ken, did I read that there's still some unresolved code enforcement issues or code issues?
No, no, sir, there actually have been no code enforcement issues with this. There were
So
some
where's the land
stipulations.
development code issues then?
I beg your pardon?
The land development code issues?
None that
So
have,
Ken, if you could just give your,
I'm sorry, Kenneth Odom, Marion County Growth Services.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
14A9 is 190712SU. I'm sorry, Commissioner. There
Yeah,
were
under
no
section
land
4A,
development.
it says there have been unresolved violations of county land development code,
And
county
that
code
was-
ordinances, and county permits. I'm just curious what that is.
That was part of the stipulation that the only way that there would be, we were looking at administrative renewals.
Uh-huh.
So if there were one of those three conditions, they would have to reapply instead of having just a typical administrative renewal.
Okay. Understand.
Okay.
I think I can help. An anonymous call came into my office, and the gentleman said he was selling beer or alcohol on Sunday, and that there was a new owner in there. So they were very familiar with the conditions, apparently, and that's how this came to our attention. We didn't get any code enforcement notification. I have sent code enforcement out there. We have not caught them open on Sunday, so.
Thanks.
Open on Sunday or?
not open on Sunday.
We have not caught them open on Sunday.
Okay. You mean not selling alcohol on Sunday?
Right. That was
So
part of
they're
the
open on
conditions.
Sunday?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can sell beer and wine. Just
You can they can sell beer and wine on Sunday, they just
Yes,
can't
sir.
sell alcohol, right?
That's correct. Only in Bellevue can you sell.
Only in Bellevue.
All in Marion County is dry.
In all of Marion County, only in Bellevue can
they-
you buy alcohol.
they line up.
That's why. That's why they got the Sunday brunches down there.
That's right.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, you can't like that member of the public.
Must be the same in Sumter County too, because there's a lot of village people.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Did you have any other questions, sir?
No, we are changing the timeline. Can you just go over the difference?
Yes, sir, and the reason this request is coming out is because, like I said, it's being purchased. There was an additional special use permit that began in 2017. The original timeline on that was to last until July 19th of 2021. With the sale of the business, that timeline would be changed with a new special use permit and would expire on July 16th, 2022. It's a period of 3 years. Like I said, there was part of that, the approval with conditions was the special use permit could be renewed administratively as long as there were no violations of any of the conditions or other code enforcement violations.
Okay. So is the same language in the current special use?
It's
where
very,
it talks
very-
about
it's-
termination upon closure?
It's very
or sale?
similar. It's very similar, yes, sir.
Okay. So was the applicant told that technically they don't have a special use today?
Yes, they were.
They were. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Yes, Commissioner Moore, for Mr. Odom.
Yep. Have we had any concerns from either the church or anyone at the park or anyone?
No,
other
sir,
than that one person that called
this
in?
was advertised. There's been no letters that have been received by the office. There's been no emails. There's been no correspondence that have negatively been against this.
But just seeing how close it is to the church and the park is my concern with it.
Sir, it's been operational since 2017, the special use permit has, and the business has. If the, actually, they've looked at the area, or in the area, they've had an ice machine. The interior of the store is kept up well. The exterior of the business has actually been improved since 2017 as well. They do have some plans to actually, I believe, open a pharmacy next door in the very near future, and those are the same owners. So they are looking actively trying to make an improvement in the area.
And you live out that way.
Well, everything on that, I mean, yeah, this is my neighborhood, so everything out there is on that corner, including the Fort McCoy, Walmart's, the Dollar General. You know, but everything's there. So I mean, I understand the concerns about being, close to stuff, but in this, in this small little rural, I mean,
That's the business.
right. That's the only place you can go.
And
really
looking
shop.
at the land uses around the area, you've got a very small commercial node that's surrounded by residential, and then it's all agricultural. So everything is
Pretty much
very
business around
compact
those
in
four
that one
corners,
little
that's it.
area.
Yeah,
Each corner. So,
it's your
okay.
district, so.
All right, so I'll move for approval.
Got a motion by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Gold to approve 14A9. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. And with that, that will take us to our planning and zoning, B1.
We're gonna, this is the DRC item, and it's the request to uphold DRC's denial of multiple waivers regarding water and sewer connection. It's the water connection requirement was one of the waivers, total capital charge, and fire flow, so there was no sewer requirement with this one. The applicant is Todd Rudiani. He and Mr. Kirkman have worked most of this out. I think Mr. Rudiani does want to get on record to allowing the opportunity to come back if everything doesn't pan out the way that he says.
It does require sewer.
It does require sewer, which I guess he is going to hook up.
So is Mr. Kirkman, are you gonna give us any detail on this as well while you're up, before we go?
I'd be glad to. For the record, Jody Kirkman, Environmental Services Director. Again, these waivers, we were able to work with the applicant in this case to work through. Originally, it was to bring over a large water main for his fire flow conditions. He was actually able to work with the fire department and utilize the existing system on baseline to put a hydrant in and meet his requirements. So then it became just a service. So working with the applicant, we're able to get him a long service. So that should take care of the first waiver. The second issue, we're going to basically work with him utilizing some of his other stores, basically sister stores, and be able to work through that, and should not be an issue. Last item, of course, on this is the waiver for the hydrant. That was taken care of working with the fire department. So that should answer it, and I'll leave it to the applicant if he wants to add anything to it.
Okay, very good, thank you. Mr. Rudiani?
That's all.
Check.
True.
It's all true.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to work it out. If not, I'll submit another waiver, but I think we've got it under control.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, absolutely. Do we have anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? If not, then we'll bring it back to the board.
Well, we're not approving, I don't know what, yes, I don't know that we need any action at this
Do we?
time.
Yeah.
We'll just allow Mr. Rudiani to bring it back if he can't work out to his satisfaction,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I've
That
got a
he can
motion.
just reapply for the waiver and come straight to the county commission. I think that's,
Okay,
Is that
so
okay?
that's fine, as long as.
No
we-
action is needed at this
No
time.
as long as no action is needed, then we'll continue forward. Thank you. Next item is gonna take us to 14C1.
Good afternoon, Chris Risen with Growth Services. This is a reasonable accommodation request for a site which is located in Rainbow Park. The applicant is requesting authorization for under reasonable accommodation for 2 goats on the property. The property consists of 2 lots. The eastern lot is a vacant lot where they have the goats currently housed. The western lot is where an existing residence has been under construction or been existing for a number of years. Staff is recommending approval of the request with a series of conditions, and we do have some photos of the property as well for reference. We did receive letters of opposition, which is why this is not on the consent agenda, for instance. Most of the opposition, to let you know, was regarding the goats and concerns regarding that, and I believe you have copies of those materials that were provided to you.
Any comments, questions?
Question for our attorney. Under the ADA compliance, if this is a medically necessary thing, we have to comply, correct? Or if you'll go with the ADA?
Well, we deal with these things similar to our special use permits. A reasonable accommodation doesn't mean any accommodation that a person requests.
Right.
So for instance, the board could consider, if, when you've heard from people here, you could consider whether a single goat would be an adequate, reasonable accommodation. Or you could consider whether some other type of animal would be a reasonable accommodation. So, that's up to your discretion based on the evidence that you hear in the proceeding today.
Okay. Is the applicant with us today? If you'd like to come up and address the board, please, with your request. Either one.
Hey, Chris, is this the one where they decided not to to not ask for the roosters? Or was that a different one?
I'm
this
not
one.
a-
different one.
that's
That
a
was a
different
different one? Okay. I'm just, some of these kind of blend together in my mind.
If you could just give your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Zindia Rodriguez. My husband is Gilberto Rodriguez. Address is 14430 Southwest 18th Place, Ocala.
Thank you.
Yes.
So would you like to explain your request?
Yes. I work many long hours. I'm a nurse. I don't spend too much time at home. So my husband has a lot of medical issues. He's going through his disability phase right now. He just had surgery and is pending another surgery. He spends a lot of hours alone. We don't have many friends here. We've only been here for 4.5 years. So the goats are his companions and while I'm at work. And it's just, they become family to us, and we keep our property very clean. We take very good care of our animals, and we're just hoping that he can keep those to help him get through all these issues that he's been going through since he's not been able to work any longer.
And how long have you had the goats?
We've had the goats about 6-7 months.
Commissioners, do you have anything for the applicant at the moment?
Just if it's medically necessary, do you have anything from a physician or?
Yes, sir. We submitted
In
it to
the
the county.
packet.
Yes, sir.
We're going to take public comment, and again, there may be some issues that you'll hear that you'll be asked to step back up and address.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item, either in opposition or in support? I ask you to come forward and address the board. I don't see anyone in the audience coming forward.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bryant with a second by Commissioner Gold. Any further? Yes?
Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, I'm looking at the pictures. So there is no pen or fenced in area today, Chris?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
If you can, this is slightly zoomed in. You can see the chain link fencing covers their little pen that they have, which is in the center.
Yeah.
Is there? Then their overall property is also fenced as well.
Thank you.
Has there been an issue with the
I
goats
think we've
getting
made
out?
an accommodation for more than one animal per person, though. Just throwing that out there. No, we did a couple kids, but that was it.
So we've got a motion to approve as presented by Commissioner Bryant with a second by Commissioner Gold.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Leave it. All in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you. The goats stay. You're welcome. We wish you well in your healing process. Okay, that takes us to 14C2. Are we in? Good afternoon. 14C2 is, we're going to talk about, if it's okay with the board, to talk about 14C2 and 14C3 at the same time. Those are companion land use amendments and special use requests. So you'll be hearing the 19L02 large-scale land use amendment today and making a recommendation for transmittal or not for transmittal, and then the special use permit will come back to you after the Department of Economic Opportunity makes their comments along with the other state agencies that review. So the application is for construction and demolition debris landfill in Marion County that requires a land use amendment. The property is located on Emerald Road, south of Marion Camp and Silver Spring Shores. It's about 43.7 acres, and it's currently zoned M1 light industrial and R3 multifamily. The future land use at this time is Commerce District. This was rezoned administratively in 2014 with the overall comprehensive plan amendment. But as you can see, well, I'll let you know that at this time, the R3 zoning is not consistent with that Commerce District land use. So that would need to be worked out if the applicant desired to develop this property for residential. So just a little bit of background, there was a special use permit approved in 1997 for a sand mine, and the criteria within that sand mine permit was that it would be reclaimed and suitable for industrial or residential uses at the end of the life of the mine. So not only is that demonstrated in the minutes that were recorded for the board meeting at that time, it's also identified in Condition 3 and Condition 11, where it states that the property owner, if the property owner decides not to construct lakes, they will reclaim the site with clean fill, and that it terminates 6 months after there's been a period of no mining activity, and that it'll be reclaimed within 90 days of the termination.
The application, an application came before the board in 2005 and was denied for the same reasons that the staff is recommending denial today. After 2005, the board enacted the Springs Protection Ordinance, which increased standards for C&D landfills and prohibited those in areas where we have karst features or that exhibit karst geology. This area is dominated by light industrial use to the north and east and single-family homes to the south and west. Within a half-mile radius, just for your reference, there are 850 home sites. Approximately 300 of those are built, and 90 of them have been built since the 2005 application was denied. So again, the site is we're recommending denial. Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended denial of the request. Recognizing that the site is in the primary springs protection zone and in an area identified in our comprehensive plan as most vulnerable for karst activity and groundwater contamination. The site is in close proximity to residential lots that are utilizing wells for their water needs, and there were some concerns from staff about the proposed site plan. We have worked with the applicant to let them know that there are some criteria that are going to need to be met prior to staff recommending making any recommendation for a special use permit if the board chooses to transmit this for adoption. Again, the proposed site plan doesn't address leachate and containment or treatment or setbacks that are adequate for our land development code. And then again, within the geotechnical report, there was not a conclusive statement that the site does not exhibit karst geology. We're concerned about the elevation of groundwater within 13 feet of the bottom of the mine. This is the concept plan that was provided to staff. We haven't received anything to date that is different than what was provided. And then this is the information that was given for the leachate collection system. Just a little bit of information. There are a few subsidence or sinkhole holes identified by DEP within the vicinity. This is the vicinity of the mine. And the majority of them are on the northeast side of Americamp Road. So staff's recommending denial. Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended denial. And if you have any questions for me, I'm able to answer them.
Yes. Mr. Minter?
Ms. Dinkins, on the recital of the staff recommendation and then under the P&Z recommendation,
Yes, sir.
it says the P&Z recommended denial, but the three findings under that are all in the affirmative. Is that a
Yes, so
typo?
that was a typo that was incorrectly placed in that report. I believe that the board has a new report that accurately reflects the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
You mentioned Employment Activity Center and that the R3 is not consistent. If you could go back to that.
Just, it was, I believe, an unintended consequence of that administrative land use amendment that it was changed to Commerce District, which doesn't have a residential component. So it administratively created this non-conformity with the zoning and the land use.
Okay, and you said in 97 it was supposed to go back to residential?
That was so in 1997 it was to go back to residential, or there was supposed to be a reclamation enacted.
And
So
then we made it commerce.
we made it commerce in
Instead.
2014.
And then, okay.
The historic zoning came along with that master plan for Silver Spring Shores. So remember that Silver Spring Shores was master planned as a residential
Right.
and mixed multi-use community.
So I got a question with you saying that didn't match, and you're saying denial of this. What would you recommend? Would you recommend us changing it to like a R1 houses, or what would you recommend saying? Because you say it can't be used for this.
What I recommended
is
to
your
the applicant was a land use amendment to Employment Center, which would allow both industrial and residential uses, or keeping the Commerce District and going with a straight M1 zoning that would allow the M1 uses by right. That was a conversation I had with the applicant early on.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't think there's any questions. I would like to say in advance of the applicant coming forward that I have had someone contact me about this, and I just want to make it public for the board as well as on record that, again, the issue being the karst area that is being proposed, as well as this board and well, a prior board, but made the tough decision to close our landfill and send material out of the county. And, you know, the issue was raised for us to be making a decision to open up another landfill, even though it be C and D, in the primary springs protection zone was something that was brought to my attention and their concern, as well as there have been other sand mines that have been abandoned in that area. And then again, the experience level of the operators was a issue that this board should address as well with this particular subject. So I just want to go on record with that.
Madam Chair, can I address that?
Yes.
So, on that issue, we have before the board today both a comp plan amendment, which is a legislative activity, we've talked about that, and sometimes we have situations like that where we have a combined comp plan amendment and concurrent either rezoning or in this case, special use permit. Either one of those is a quasi-judicial activity. So actually the board should not be, individuals should not approach the board about those types of matters outside of the public hearing. So if any of the others of you were contacted by anybody about this application, if the information that was provided to you was different, or if it was virtually the same as what Chairman Stone has said, if you can just acknowledge that on the record.
Yes.
If there was any difference, the idea is to give the applicant an opportunity to understand what information you've heard so that they can respond to it, whatever that information is.
I'll just go on record. I heard some similar to that from a constituent, but also that there's excessive amount of C and D currently available, so there's not the need. But, you know, I heard that from a constituent.
All right.
So.
Same information, but actually less because I was in a meeting.
Okay.
Ditto.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And with the applicant coming forward, Mr. Tillman.
Good afternoon, David Tillman, Tillman Associates Engineering, 1720 Southeast 16th Avenue, Building 100, Ocala, Florida, 34471. I'd like to pass a few items out to the commission, with your permission.
Sure.
We can share. Nice purple shirt, Dave.
Well, the first thing I'd like to address is the karst sensitivity. We did have a soils report done. There were no karst features identified within that geotechnical report. They did not hit any lime rock to the depths that they bored. They did bore all the way down to the water table. So there's no karst features found. You know, certainly karst feature maps and the McCava maps are not as accurate as doing soil borings directly onto a site where you get an exact representation of the type of soil material that is there, rather than just using the USDA's NRCS soil surveys.
Mr. Tillman, let me just ask if we can get your microphone turned up just a little bit, please. Thank you. And carry on, I'm sorry.
That's fine. So You know, that in mind, along with the fact that we are lining this C&D landfill, which is not something that you see in the majority of the C&D landfills that we have in Marion County. You know, this is going to be putting something in place that is better place for us to dump our C&D waste than something that is worse. So this is an improvement and a step forward in our landfill situation. So it's not a step backwards. So I think it is definitely a positive thing to bring forward. I think there is a need for it whenever you consider the fact that the majority of these are not lined in Marion County, and this one will be. We are intending on putting in a leachate collection system. You know, and also the other thing that one of the complaints that I had at the planning and zoning hearing was regarding the entrance and the conflicts with trucks backing up on the streets adjacent to the school. We did move, if you look at the site plan that I provided you, the sheet with the layout on it of the mine, we relocated the entrance from off of Emerald Road to one of the unimproved right-of-ways, which is Spruce Road. We would have to improve that right-of-way and put the entrance on the back side of this facility, which would encourage all the trucks to come from the other direction because it makes the access to 484 much closer to bring them directly in and not go past the school, so that we eliminate any potential conflict that may have existed with the sand mine for the C&D pit. So we separate that traffic and move it to another location where there isn't the potential for stacking out in front of the residential homes or the school system. So that was one of the modifications that we made. I did meet with Ms. Dinkins to go over some of the setbacks. We told her that we would meet the setback criteria and the buffers for this site. We talked about the fact that the typical buffer does require a wall. We did state that we would want to improve the fence that we have in place and provide additional vegetation besides just what is there right now at this time. I provided pictures, and all these pictures, there's 5 here. Those are the views from the adjacent homes that are, there's only 5 homes adjacent to this facility, and that shows the existing buffer. Some of them do need improvements, you can see, but there is already a lot of established vegetation in place that provides a significant buffer. But there are a few open air gaps there that need additional trees planted and additional shrubbery. We intend on doing that, but we didn't want to do a wall because that means we have to go through the region that we have here, or if we go behind this, you can't see the wall at all. So there's really no purpose in adding a wall to this. Just the additional vegetation will create a screening that is opaque and will leave a zero impact or visual impact or impact at all on the adjacent neighbors. I know people say that there's a negative impact whenever you put this next to a housing project, but I mean, as you probably are well aware of, the golf course and the Pine Oaks Golf Course here in the city of Ocala, which is right next door to Friends of Recycling, has a new community project moving forward where the developer paid millions of dollars to purchase that property and do a housing development right next door. So and also if you look down on the Bellevue Loop Road, there is a landfill right across the street from a subdivision that is continuing to grow and houses to be constructed inside of it right next door. So right across the street, which is the scenario that we're looking at here. So I don't believe that this is as negative of an impact as people make out, because it's not like a regular landfill where you're bringing in household garbage that smells. The only thing that you have the potential of smelling is the gypsum board. And I will tell you, I grew up in the building supply industry, and we had gypsum that got wet, and when it got wet, it was ruined, and we stacked it outside, and it got rained on multiple times. I never smelled it. I think it's the Chinese drywall that came in for a period of time that stinks so bad whenever it gets wet that it's not something that's regularly used in the construction industry now, so I don't think the gypsum getting wet is as big of a problem, but we intend on remedying that by having a shelter that we will be storing that under, keeping it dry until the time that we have enough of it to warrant moving it in, burying it, sealing it off so that it does not create an odor problem whatsoever. So we're not planning on having any odor issues out here and of any nature. We don't think there'll be any negative impacts to the adjacent neighborhood. Just as you see that, you know, they're building right next to them right now, so I don't see how anybody can point out and say, hey, this is going to ruin my community. It's not going to ruin the community. I mean, we're developing more than one project right next to these C&Ds currently, so I don't see the negative impact that's been brought forward. I'll sit down. I know there's going to be a lot of comments that come out of this. If there's any questions that you have at this point in time, I'll be happy to answer them. But I'll be glad to come back up and I'll try to jot notes down as people comment.
You said you did the geo. I didn't see it. So do we have the report?
We did provide that to staff, yes.
Okay.
Geotechnical report.
Kim, where is it at?
It was provided to us electronically, so we can make sure that the board gets a copy of that.
It's not in this packet.
I don't believe that it is. It's
I
not in
don't
this
see it.
packet. I can go print them out.
You get it emailed to us?
Oh, would you? Yep, we can email them to you right now.
Thanks.
Anything else before we open for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, sure. I do have one person who has signed up to speak on this item, Sam Levine. Mr. Levine, if you'd like to come forward.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'm Sam Levin, 692 Mayo Avenue, Maitland, Florida. I'm here representing PP Investments. They're concerned about property values. The karst issue is important for a number of reasons, but the biggest reason is a liner cannot contain leachate unless it has support underneath it. So the reason you don't put landfills in karst areas is because if there's a sinkhole, then the liner is going to collapse, and all that liquid is going to drain into the aquifer. Talked about wallboard getting wet and no odors. Well, you're missing a couple of pieces there. If you have wallboard and it gets wet and there's no oxygen and there's an organic source, which is buried wallboard in a landfill, that's where you get odors. Several C&Ds around the state have suffered from serious odor problems because of it. I closed one in Osceola County 5 years ago with just that problem. A lot of them in the Panhandle, same problem. And that gets into a liner. If you're unlined like all of your other C&Ds in the county, then the water drains quickly right through it and it's not contained. If you put a liner in, as a liner is proposed for this site, you're now creating a barrier for that water not to get out, and the water can rise up into the wallboard, and there you have your odors. There is a leachate collection system that's set up, and you can actually design so that your leachate level never gets high enough to reach the wallboard. The collection system that's designed for this site doesn't work that way. They're using sand as a drainage media. Sand works and meets the rule, but works slowly, so it takes a long time for that water to get out. And because it takes a long time for the water to get out, it'll pool up on the liner system, odors. There was talk about the geotechnical report. If I understood the staff analysis correctly, the geotechnical report recommended ground penetrating radar that was not performed. So you're looking for a sinkhole with a couple of holes punched into the ground? That's not enough. Now, ground penetrating radar, you do a transect maybe every 50 feet or every 100 feet, and you take readings back and forth across the site looking for karst features. I don't think that was done.
Can you give us your experience level on the comments that you're making, Mr. Levine?
Sure. I've been a consulting engineer for landfills for 44 years. I work for Marion County. I still work for Marion County, but I work for every county in the Central District of DEP. Work for Nassau County up near the Panhandle. This is all I do.
Okay, very good. Did you have any other thoughts on this?
I think your staff did a great job in going through your comprehensive plan and where this doesn't match up. And they were very helpful when I went and asked questions concerning the application.
Very good. Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience?
Steve Rudiani, 2441 Northeast 3rd Street, Suite 201. I handled the special use permit back in 1997 for Albert Peak trustee prior to selling to Jeff Fabian's father-in-law for this particular sand mine. And I made the representation that it would not be a C&D pit as part of getting it approved. That's a matter of record. That was part of the idea. So I don't want to sit there and say it's not a use that could go there, but when we did it back then, is part of the agreement with the commission in 1997 was it would not be a C&D pit. It would be reclaimed. In retrospect, we probably should have put it into the deed restrictions saying that, but we made I made a commitment to the county that it would not be a C&D pit. So I just want to reaffirm that what we said 22 years ago is still what was agreed to when we sold the property. And that goes for the RBI pit too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else in the audience?
How you doing?
Fine.
My name's Jerry Lorenko, 9875 Southeast 58th Avenue. Let me just start up front by telling you that I am in favor of approving it for a C&D landfill. I don't oppose it. I remember when it was denied in 2005, and it was because there was a school nearby and because of residential concerns, okay? A lot has changed since then. As Mr. Levin would tell you, in 2009 or 10, DEP actually requires C&D landfills now to have liners, okay, and a leachate collection system. When I found out that the applicant was willing to move the entrance to Spruce Road, that made all the difference in the world to me. I drive by there on Emerald Road for the last 30-something years, okay, every day, and there's not a traffic issue. He's going to redirect the traffic to Mary Camp Road, to Emerald Road, to Spruce. He's going to pass all industrial uses on their way in. As far as, some of the negative impacts of residential, there's been 5 houses built on Emerald Road in the last 35 to 40 years. Okay, they were selling lots on that road for $99 down, $99 a month for a year. The applicant, there's a need for these things. I know somebody said, I don't know if it was Commissioner Moore, said, well, they're concerned about, having them too close together or competition. If you take a 4-mile radius on 441 in Bellevue, there's 6 Quick Kings there. And Wawa's building one today. I mean, I don't buy that concept. I believe in competition, okay? I just don't want to see this board deny an applicant for something that's going to be regulated by DEP. His process to go through is going to be long. It's going to be expensive. Just to line it is probably somewhere between $80,000 to $100,000 an acre. Mr. Levin would probably know better than me. I understand a man just trying to do business. And so I would not recommend denial. I would support this applicant. We could use them. The more options people have to dispose of their C&D debris, the better off we all are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lorenko. Do we have anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? If not, I'll invite the applicant back to address these issues.
Thank you, Commissioners. The liner leachate comment regarding sinkholes, he made the comment regarding GPR and GPR being a more thorough investigation. We don't have any issue with adding that to our special use permit requirements. We could certainly GPR does locate any loose zones that may exist below this site. and we could remedy any of those prior to putting our liner in. So we don't have any objection to doing the GPR. It's something that I frequently suggest to clients to do. So that is a reasonable addition to add. And the leachate collection system is not fully designed for this facility. So it will be very easy to design it to where there is no gypsum getting wet problem within the system. I certainly don't think that putting in a system, as he suggested, that does not have a liner and then is direct sand straight into our aquifer as a better solution. I certainly think that a liner leachate system that collects any of this leachate and is hauled to a site that's permitted to dispose of it is a much better solution than it going straight into our aquifer. I don't see that as a solution at all. And the wallboard getting wet is one of the reasons that we are storing it separately so that it can be put away. There's only 4 of these facilities in Marion County. So when we say that we've got too many of them, we're not talking like we've got 20 of them and they're scattered all over the place. I mean, we've got 4. This would be the 5th one. So it's not like we have a huge number of these facilities in Marion County. I don't know if there's any additional things to add that are, there's no additional questions asked that I think I could answer. When we talk about C&D debris, right in the very first line of the definition from FDEP is non-hazardous in nature. So we're starting off talking about something that's non-hazardous in nature according to FDEP. But yet we are going to put in a liner. We are going to protect that liner. And we're going to have a system put together to where we're pulling out anything that doesn't meet the criteria in the definitions. And we're going to put together a good system that's a quality C&D landfill for Marion County. And it'll be one of our better C&D landfills because of the fact that it is lined. And so it does protect our community. It does protect our water. So I ask that you approve this, you transmit it forward, and then when it comes back to you for the special use permit, that we move forward to approving it at that point. If there's any specific questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Yes, Commissioner Gold?
I don't have a question, but I just have comments about the area when
I've got
you're
some
ready.
questions,
You want to do your questions first?
if you don't mind. Can you talk about the experience level of the operator?
No, ma'am, I did not gather that information ahead of time, but it's not something that we're going to go in and do just willy-nilly. I mean, you say there's specific criteria that's going to have to be put in place for FDEP when we go through the permitting process. And we're going to abide by all those rules and criteria. I mean, so I don't, they give you guidelines. And if you follow those guidelines, what you're doing is going to be right and it's going to be correct and it's going to work. And so we are going to follow those, and I'm certainly used to following the rules.
Has anyone in that management, or does anyone have management of a C&D landfill?
Not currently, but we'll be looking to hire somebody with that type of experience to manage that facility. It's not something we're going to just find somebody off the streets and say, have you ever seen a dump truck? All right, you're good. Let's bring you in here and you can charge people by looking at a weight scale. I mean, we're looking to find somebody that does have experience within this industry to manage the facility.
Mr. Tillman, have you ever engineered a C&D landfill?
No, ma'am. This will be my first one. But it's not the first time I've done something for the first time and done a good quality job of it either.
Commissioners, any questions of the applicant? Yeah, go ahead.
My turn now?
Yeah, sure.
Or does Jeff, you want to go?
No, go ahead.
He has comments.
Okay. So, David, the road, the entrance, are they going to sign an agreement to maintain it?
Yes, sir. Be happy to.
Water and sewer?
We can bring water and sewer to the site if we need to.
So if needed, based on that criteria, I think part of this is, depending on how we move forward today, if we transmit, then there's a lot of time for us to ask you for much more data, including the ground penetrating, the radar. Does it have a clay bottom? Do you know? Or is it all sand?
It doesn't reach the high permeability clays.
It doesn't.
But it does. But the permeability is not extremely high in this region either. We could subsidize it with something like bentonite and mix it. That could provide a little bit higher, but with the fact that we're putting the liner in place as well, I'm sorry, I thought somebody was trying to get my attention. But when you put the liner in place, the secondary containment is not as important. I mean, what we were talking about of what we have in existence now is unlined that drains straight into our aquifer. So we're putting something in place that's entirely different than what we currently have.
Right, and each system has its own challenges. I mean, Mr. Levin's correct that stuff drains better if it's unlined. I get that, but the system of having a lined landfill is by far much better, and you can control the water amounts in a lined landfill, right?
Right.
So you control how much water there, how much depth there, and you can design it not to go, the water not to exceed the dirt level or the base, right?
Right, and I mean, you can also, I mean, the sands that you select will determine how fast it percolates as well. I mean, whether or not it takes weeks, days, or hours to get through.
Well, if I remember correctly, I mean, DEP used to want clay bottom landfills anyway, even when, right? Is that right, Sam? Yeah. So before that, they wanted as less permeability as you could get in a C&D landfill, so that it took a very long time for that material to go through the draining process when it was unlined, which makes sense, right? And
Yes,
so
sir.
now that you're lining it, though, you want it to move and you want to be able to truck it and move it out. And so
But it's on the layer above the liner. Yes, that is correct.
okay. Those details, have they been supplied to us on how that's going to work?
No, sir. It has not been designed in its entirety. This is the first step of the process, and we have to meet all the rules.
Right.
And at that point in time, that's when when we do the major site plan process with the county is when we would anticipate doing complete design.
So if we approve through today and at least approve because all we're doing today is transmitting to Tallahassee and getting their feedback, correct?
Yes, sir.
So DEP is going to, I would assume, make a ton of comments in some of that. Are you going to be able to do the ground penetrating radar and get us some kind of level of comfort with design, and then give us a list of materials? Because I don't know that we're going to, gypsum is a big deal. I don't know if we're going to approve necessarily either or, whether we're going to allow it to be collected and moved out or allow it to be buried, depending on, I think, some of the information you provide to us.
Right. And I mean, we could easily provide a location for that gypsum. That's an area that's reserved for that, that's at a higher elevation, that the water levels wouldn't have the ability to reach.
I think we certainly need a different plan, because that has certainly been a big issue around the state of Florida.
Okay.
Because if you're going to have a smell problem, that's where it's going to come from.
Right.
If you do get a smell problem moving forward, you probably need to also supply us with a remedy package.
Okay. Yes, sir.
That we can enforce.
Did you have a question, Commissioner Moore?
I've just got a question based on what Mr. Rudiani said, that when they sold it, they didn't want a C&D landfill, but they wanted residential. I just know from being in real estate how quickly, like just at lunch, one of our clients, his house went on the market. He had 2 offers, full price offers, within 24 hours of it going on the market. Things are pretty hot right now. I'm just curious as why you wouldn't put in, a nice little thing there, because the area in the shores is selling rather well.
Well, we've got a pretty nice hole already dug to start, so.
Yeah, I know you got a nice hole there, but it's like, I'm just kind of curious as to why.
Well, with the land uses in place, it would make more sense to do industrial, which the industrial type use falls in line with what we're asking for.
Right, but isn't this, or maybe this is for staff, but what are the uses for M1? Because it's an M2 or for something, or anyway, I might be wrong, that this is more intense than
That's why
M1?
they're asking for a
M2 is more intense than
That's why they're
M1,
asking
yes.
for a land use amendment.
Okay.
Any other questions of the applicant?
And Mr. Tillman can stay up here, and if
Go
you're
ahead,
right.
Commissioner
And I wish the concerns, I could have got a hold of the people that had the concerns, months ago when this came up, and we had one-on-ones months ago about this, and I could have answered some of my opinion with it. For the board's information, I lived about 500 feet from there for about 12 years, and the traffic is bad through there. It's noisy anyway. It was active with the sand mine, I believe it then. RBI was active. There's not a lot of noise that can go on in that area. You have Lockheed Martin dismisses all the times during the week, so it's always been a noisy area in there, and I don't see how anything else is really gonna make a difference on that. And when we're talking about the smells, and all due respect to our utilities department, it's pretty close to the station, the septic, what is it called? Where are we at? The Emerald Road?
Sewer plant, right down the
Sewer
street.
plant right down the road, and you're gonna smell that a lot quicker than you're gonna smell anything else on there. In fact, I drove through there Saturday.
True.
And you do a great job, but it's still, I talked to the county administrator about this
smell.
yesterday during our overview about this. I thought it was property in the area, but it does, but it still has a pretty bad smell in there, and I just don't see anything. There hasn't been a lot of residential building in there in years. There's still a lot of lots that are open. I'm just answering Commissioner Moore's concerns on that. But I lived there the whole time, and the traffic and the vehicles going by, and if they're moving it over to Spruce Road, that's gonna take out pretty much any of the noise or any of the traffic coming out. I didn't even know about this until today, and that's even better, because I did have concerns originally months ago when you brought it, and I had to be reminded today who brought it, because I didn't even remember who was bringing this one to us, that I had some concerns over it coming off Emerald Road, because that's right at the school, and you've changed that from then. So, I mean, I wish I could have got a hold and spoke to everybody about this way before, and then even today, we approved a new franchise, and I think somebody said experience wasn't a factor on that, and I know a new franchise compared to a landfill is a lot different, but, you know, the smell's not, unless it's a major odor. When I've been around a lot of landfills, including ours this weekend, I don't think this is gonna make a big difference compared to what's already there, and the traffic and the noise compared to that. You've got Lockheed Martin and then other industry right in the area, and I don't think it's gonna make a big difference. And that's why I said I lived within 500 feet from 12 years there. RBI pit is still closed, and they shoot over there all the time, and there's just the regular noise of Silver Spring Shores is enough to outweigh some of the other things. So.
Could I have staff come back? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Tillman.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So Ms. Dinkins, how close is Lockheed Martin from this and the issues that we are currently facing in that particular area now?
Lockheed Martin is in this vicinity.
We can't see
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
It's
okay.
it's adjacent to Mary Camp.
Can we just get
behind-
that up on our
Yeah.
screen?
Sorry, trying to.
It's across
You have to go up.
north of there.
Keep going.
Straight up.
Trying to give you the parcel, but it's probably not gonna tell me which one it is. Oh, it is in its name. So there are a number of parcels that are kind of in that complex.
Okay, so let me address my comments to Mr. Russo. The issues that we are facing out there currently that utilities is dealing with. Can you pinpoint and show how this may have an impact, or will there be any overlap to currently what we're dealing with out there?
Commissioner, it does overlap areas out there that there's been concerns over the water quality issues around Lockheed Martin area. I don't know how much
I mean, that's my question. Is this in that vicinity, and is there any issue?
It is in the vicinity. The intent would be to try to contain the water, is my understanding from what I'm hearing. So I don't know how much you would expect that water to leave their site other than in a leachate system.
And is this in the primary springs protection zone?
Yes, that was in Kim's presentation, yes.
I'm just asking.
Yes, ma'am.
Again. So in engineering a liner for any sort of debris in the primary springs protection zone with the weight of what this would particularly hold, are we aware of any C&D landfills anywhere that have a liner in a primary springs protection zone that has been engineered in the past?
Not since the primary springs protection zone was established. The Southside Recycling Center has a clay liner, but not a HDPE liner that's being proposed here. So there was a condition within their special use permit that they lined future cells of their system, but to my knowledge, there aren't any in place yet.
And that is a C&D
It's a C&D landfill as well.
landfill?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
And we can get another expert but there's not a lot of line C&Ds in the state of Florida.
Right.
I don't think there's a ton of them, maybe some more in South Florida, possibly, but a lot of that's transferred out anyway. DEP put that rule in, and I think in 15, I think it actually got passed 15 or 16. And so, there's still a lot of capacity, and of course the private sector is going to use as much of that capacity before they have to start lining landfills. And so I still think lining landfills is a 10, 20 year planning horizon, possibly, depending on growth, capacity, and construction. They're going to get lined and they're going to get opened in Tampa and some of those other areas before they're going to get open, probably in Marion County, to be honest with you. Just because the cost to do that is very prohibitive.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has to be the market there. It has to be a good analysis. I mean, you're not now talking about just having the right geotechnical work done. Now you're talking about the investment and the capital needed to put an entire leachate system in on top of a liner. So, it's so much more expensive than even the startup of a really expensive endeavor in the first place. And Mr. Tillman is correct. I mean, my family has opened one of the, and done that work and been part of that process. And it is going through DEP's process is no joke. And the application will look something like, here, Sam? Somewhere in the paperwork to get done? Yeah? Okay, well, just like this. It feels like this when you're paying for it. So I think that maybe one of the best things we can do, is have Kim also, if this moves forward, then, have Kim work with DEP on their comments on part of the process and bring us back some of that information so we understand exactly what that looks like. Because you're right, the reason why we have the karst language in our comp plan and land development code is because we don't want to put C&D pits on top of things that can fall into the aquifer, right? Whether it's lined or unlined, it doesn't matter. You don't want that to happen, and that's a huge problem if it does. DEP is going to be very strenuous on that process as well. The fact that you have a liner is huge because you can remove that. Not only our sewer plant is right there, but American Pipe and Tank, that takes more sewage than anything else, raw, is
In the backside of that.
right back behind it as well. What is it, Atlantic or whatever they're called, the reuse oils,
And
right
the
over there too.
plastics.
And then only God knows what Lockheed Martin does. So, besides build missiles. So it's in probably in a best place you could get it to figure it out, but we do need to make sure that the geotech is right. These whole things, the landfill business is about the geotechnical. It's about whether the ground underneath you will support the future hold, right? Because you're going to put however many cubic tons on top of it, and you're going to do it at an exponential rate, right? And so the ground's going to get different pressure than if you were putting a house on it, So.
question, actually,
Yeah.
Commissioners.
Yeah.
About how long does that take, that process, to go through DEP?
Oh, he's gonna be a year,
All right.
maybe more.
And they're gonna look at all the cars and all that. They're gonna look at everything, right?
Yeah, and we can just we can make sure too. I mean, the ground penetrating radar and a lot of those things are becoming pretty much, run of the mill through the business, as far as I've heard. I mean, haven't
Madam
done one
Chair,
in a very
with-
long time.
With that, I'll just make a motion to approve for transmittal.
I've got a motion to.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Question.
Yes.
Well, kind of question, how long does it take to do the ground penetrating radar?
I don't know.
Depends on how quickly you can
Yeah.
hire the firm. I don't think that's a long time.
Okay.
And I'd like to see the sinkhole activity around there again as well.
The ground penetrating radar, we can have that done prior to the next hearing. So that is something that can be done.
Thank you.
And we can work with DEP on the leachate system, make sure we can tell. I think part of this transmission should also be telling, just to be honest with DEP and say, hey, listen, this is in a springs protection zone. This is in these zones. Make sure that Kim notes that, so that if we do that, it moves forward. We can ask DEP also in this transmittal, what has been their experience with gypsum and how it reacts in a leachate system. All of those questions are fine, but they should be answered either by us through that, require the development agreement to do it, or whatever else you'd
Well,
like to do.
all those requirements are already,
Oh, I know that.
Right there. yeah,
But I'm just
reiterating.
reiterating it and making sure that, we get a response not only from our side and from the client side, but we get a response from DEP's history that's inspecting these things every quarter across the state.
And is that something that they will provide?
Yeah,
this is
it's
my
public
first-
record from them. But I think we can, obviously in transmittal, Kim can talk to whoever it is and say, hey, these are some of our concerns, and we can get their feedback as well. They do this day in and day out.
And just for the record, we did speak with our solid waste folks who are in constant communication with DEP, and there were some concerns that were raised just based on the information that we were able to provide as far as what type of activity and what type of information would be provided to us when a final determination is made. We just, as staff, were going on a very limited amount of information when we brought this to you based on the application that was given to us. So that was our major concern, is that there's just a lot of uncertainty as to the types of materials, the type of operation, how it will be, at the time access, and we still have very limited information as far as leachate containment system, and we know that there are some pretty permeable soils underneath that, in that site. So those were the main concerns, and the fact that we're in a primary springs protection zone in an area that we've identified as most vulnerable for karst vulnerability.
Well, and bringing that up, how did we determine this is a site that's most vulnerable, but yet we can get a geotech that says they've done soil bearings and they don't see any karst material?
So the way that the McCava was developed was a localized effort that mimicked what the state did at a state level for aquifer vulnerability. It took into account confinement layers, depth to groundwater, the presence or absence of karst features, kind of cylindrical features that you can see in the landscape, and then soil type. So it was a weighted measurement of 4 different parameters, being the soil type, the depth to confinement, the depth of the confinement, and the permeability of the soils. And that was kind of all compacted together to give us this layer that represents our most vulnerable, less vulnerable, regular vulnerability areas, because all of Marion County can be considered vulnerable. So
The majority of the county falls in more or most also.
they also looked at these subsidence events that you can see on your screen. So where those were located.
Can you use your pointer and show me, because I can't see, I see pink and yellow.
This, the pink is a more confined area. This is based on DEP data. So like what would be considered a more confined area, and then the yellow would be more porous soils that you would find in the area. And so these little dots represent sinkhole events that they are aware of.
And where is
then
the
the site-
property that we're looking at right now?
is, here.
And okay, so the closest sinkhole.
Actually, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. It's right in here, like right on that barrier, right on that boundary, I mean.
Okay, right on that boundary. And what's the vicinity location-wise?
I want to say that it was about 2,000 feet when I checked from here to here.
Really? That's a little, that's all way at Emerald and 464 though, isn't it?
It's past.
By the old dentist office.
I don't know what's there, honestly. I thought it was
It's
a
our-
home.
used to be our utilities. I'm sorry.
No,
Sorry,
that
Madam Chair, I
and
just know that.
That's okay, go
I
ahead.
can certainly get that information for you. If you choose to transmit and we come back, we can take a better look at that. This was just a
Madam
kind of
Chair,
for visual reference.
That's past the railroad track, so if you're going straight from where the site is, that's gonna be past our sewage treatment plant over the railroad tracks, correct? And Mary Camp, so it looks like it's gonna be up around, it's gonna be a lot farther than 2,000 feet, I think. It's gonna be
About half a mile?
half mile to a mile, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a pretty good.
It doesn't. Not from-
There's a scale on the bottom left-hand corner there, but I can't read it.
Well, and the scale
I'm
isn't
lucky
gonna
to
help us.
see,
So this is probably not the best visual to have given you. I'm sorry for that, but I did want to make sure that it was, I mean, it was just they're used for.
Can you zoom in
Reference.
to
There
the
we go.
site?
There we go. And now, can you find the site on there?
Yeah, cause that's in like 88th Street, 89th Street.
And our site is here.
Terrace. 90th Avenue Road goes straight through there, so.
Our site is here.
Yeah.
So it's west of Mary Camp.
So that's where the sinkhole was, and it's within a couple thousand feet.
Yes, ma'am. And then there's this
Go
one.
up on your scale, go up on the map.
And
so I
what,
can see the scale. I'm
there's
sorry.
also one in the pink that looked pretty close, or, but,
About 3/4 of a mile.
so can you show us the site one more time?
Okay. The site is here.
Okay, and the property that's in the pink,
Isn't it?
There's a portion of the property that's in the pink.
okay, and there's a little round circle there as well, in the pink.
Yes.
Okay, so that appears to be closer than 2,000 feet, if I'm using your
The-
distances from where the property was.
That's a 1/6 of a mile scale.
Want to do it? Unfortunately, it's going to be a bit distorted when I take it out of GIS and put it into a slide. So I certainly don't want to give the impression that that's going to be an accurate representation of the scale.
Half a mile to that one, maybe a mile to the other.
Okay. Okay. I just interested in knowing. I mean, one, our comp plan is saying that we're prohibiting this. And for us to transmit, I want us to know what we're doing.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Can I say something as well?
Please.
With all due respect, you know, the comp plan and even the land development code has not really been updated since the regulation changed at the state level to go from unlined to lined. And it is different. It's not just a little different, it's radically different from a construction and demolition standpoint. I don't know if you would have had the same issues if the comp plan was designed and we knew that the regulation that the DEP was gonna have. Just my 2 cents. I mean, I
I'm very
think that,
interested.
you know, a lined landfill, I mean, a lot of people are more scared of these things than probably so. I mean, with all due respect, how many sinkholes did we fill in at the landfill of ours? 5 in the last 6 years? In our landfill, in our water retention areas.
In the retention area.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got them active on our landfill site. But with an activity like that, at least to the best of our knowledge, our liner is still intact and still working. And the only issue we have is the urban cell that was unlined.
Which was not lined.
Right. So,
I have a quick question. So when I read, the action that we would be taking today would be to transmit for agency comments.
Yes, ma'am.
and it's showing that we would be sending it to DEO.
Yes, ma'am.
Would it go, it's going to go to DEP as well?
Yes, they are one of those reviewing agencies. And the DEP's Land Use Planning Division gets this, but we can specifically send it to the solid waste folks too, to get their input as well. I don't think that anything prohibits us from asking those questions.
I think there's a lot of information that going back to what Commissioner Zalek said earlier, all we're doing today is approving it for transmittal to get comments back. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. And there will be a lot more discussion once we get those comments back and it comes back to the board.
Yeah, I think
I think we're trying to make a decision. We're thinking we're approving.
Right, we're not.
And we're not approving. We're just sending it for transmittal.
We're good. Thank you, Mr. Tillman.
So, Madam Chair, if you don't mind. So
No.
to Commissioner Bryant's point, I mean, I think it's always apt to give a landowner, a shot, if you will. Because I know how tough these things are. They're never easy. They're never in a perfect spot. They're never in, it's never in utopia, right? Exactly where you want it. With all due respect, we struck gold when we were able to partner with the Heart of Florida, right? And not have to expand our own footprint of our landfill, not have to look at other items, not have to do any of those other things. And that afforded us a great opportunity, and we've seized on that for the taxpayers of Marion County. But again, until DEP makes some comments, until we get a full geotechnical study done, and there's a tricky balance here, because when you're on the other side of the podium, you're sitting there trying to figure out, okay, how much money? Do I dump, $50,000 in consulting fees to get this part to my move? How much before I put $250,000 in? What's the appetite of this Board of County Commissioners? Because if we say no, there ain't even no point in him trying to do all the other stuff with DEP. And so you got to try to figure out that balance. And I think them doing a little more work, getting comments back from DEP, if we need more work after that, we get more work done until the board is satisfied that it's either a go or no go. But I think part of the reason why they're here today is that they don't want to spend, and I understand that, you don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars before you even if you can't even get past go, which makes sense, right? So.
I have a quick question too, for our staff.
Yes.
And I don't know who's gonna be able to answer the question. So, as far as our landfill, because we're winding everything down. Jody. We're winding everything down. Refresh my memory. Were we taking this type of material at our landfill?
Yes and no. For some of the C&D, most of it's going to the private side. We're taking more of the solid waste.
But were we taking more of it before we started winding our operation down? Do you know the answer to that question?
You take it if we bring it to you. We don't bring it. From a private hauler standpoint, we don't bring you C&D
Right.
because it costs us way more money most of the time.
But were we taking it from other entities is my question.
Yeah, basically what
Yeah, you
we
don't
advertised actually as of July 15th was, stop taking abrasive grit, asbestos, boats, broken concrete. Those are the type things we actually stopped taking, and C&D was what we advertised to the public was actually to start taking your C&D to these other locations.
Okay.
So if that answers your question, again, for that transition into the transfer station.
Okay, thank you.
So the motion on the floor by Commissioner Gold, second by Commissioner Zalek, is to transmit today. Any other comments, questions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass.
Madam Chair, just for clarification purposes for staff, usually when we send an application like this land use change to the state, I don't know that the solid waste arm of DEP will look at it, we probably need to make a special request.
So
If that's what you.
that's exactly what must be done for me to ever get to a point that I would ever approve this. So, Mr. Tillman, I am not on board with this project today.
Neither am I, but
Because they
Just
don't,
as you plan for
they don't
your
have much to
investment.
look at, but probably they can give us some feedback of what concerns we need to be
Well,
looking at, or.
Well, my very big concern is, again, looking at the primary springs protection zone and an engineered lined landfill.
Yeah, we'll send it, and we
Yeah.
will consult with them directly to see what kind of input we can get from them, from the solid waste arm of DEP.
Okay,
Do you want Mr. Tillman again?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, I just misunderstood when you said his name.
I just
thought
was
you-
making sure he understood where I sat in the public's eye, I'm able to say that,
And
so.
all I wanted to say was, I mean, I was coming back a while ago to say exactly what Commissioner Zalek said, is, you know, there's a balance between how much information we provide at the very first step. You know, and if you send us back and say, we need more information regarding this, and this, and these are the items in which we're gonna be making decisions, and we have to have that information, then it's our job to provide it at that point in time. But every single project that I bring in front of you, the idea is to spend as little as possible to get it to the point where it's at an approval state, so that we can move forward with the design afterwards to meet all those conditions and to make the project viable. So you don't want to spend, we don't want to spend $250,000 coming forward knowing nothing about what the appetite is of the commission for approving something like this. I think I've received pretty good marching orders today, and I know that I'm going to get more information that's going to come back from FDEP that'll come through staff to me that says, can you do this, this, and this? And if you do meet all these criteria and you show us that this isn't going to be a negative impact through these means, then I think that we'll be at an approvable level.
So let me just confirm with staff that I made note when Commissioner Zalek said something to the effect of GPR, add to the conditions.
Ground penetrating radar.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. And a gypsum remedy package.
And I think to the extent possible, Madam Chair, if I may, David, if you can be as friendly to Kim's request as financially feasible, we would
Absolutely.
appreciate that, because, I mean, DEP may have some other suggestions that we haven't mentioned today, and Kim can make those suggestions to you, and of course, you can walk that line.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
And Mr. Tillman, I think it would also be very prudent for you to show some kind of a need for
Yes.
this type of facility moving forward with what's
Currently.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That will take us to 14C4.
Me again.
You again.
Kim, I don't know if we're real happy with seeing you today.
I'm sorry. I told.
Always Kim.
When the
It's
kennel
always
is your
you.
easiest.
Sam does that to
I
her
know.
on
I
purpose.
know.
Sam just give you everything that's controversial, or what?
I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it. So 14C4
Yeah.
is 190603 SU. It's Yogi Baba Investments. They're asking for a recreational vehicle as a security residence in B5. The site is located on Northwest Gainesville Road. Oh, that is not the location, I apologize. It is on Northwest Gainesville Road, in the northwest portion of the county at Northgate Shopping Center. This is not the correct presentation. I apologize. But that is the correct site. So this is the site plan that was provided to us. Mr. Patel asked for 2 RVs on the site. This was something that came to you back in 2012, and it was approved for 1 RV. The second RV was never removed, and it was sold to Mr. Patel with the 2 RVs on it. We sent a letter to him asking him to renew his special use permit that expired in 2015, and that's when we realized that the 2 RVs were still there. So we are this is just some site photos to let you know what the site looks like. The RV is positioned kind of behind to the north of the building, behind the existing tire shop. And it looks like this as of Friday. Mr. Patel removed 1 trailer after we had a discussion with him and let him know that we weren't going to approve or recommend approval. He removed the trailer that you see to the right. At the time, we had some questions about how the waste was being handled in that trailer, and it turned out that it wasn't. It was being handled with a 55-gallon drum, and so we have some concerns not just about the way that was being handled, but some additional septage issues that it might be happening on site. So in looking at this case, we recognize that we do allow a dwelling unit by right in B5, but typically we do require that it is of the same construction and architectural standards as the existing building, which this is not, and that's what's requiring the special use permit. Again, you had a special use permit that was issued in 2012 that expired in 2015. It is stated that it's a FEMA trailer on the application, but it is not. It's just an RV. Again, we're concerned about the condition of that RV, question about whether or not the existing facility can handle the RV plus all of the other uses that are on the site because it is an old system. And then we don't contemplate typically an RV as a security residence. We have provided you with some alternate approval conditions. If you'd like to talk about those, mainly that they get 1 RV, they have to demonstrate that it doesn't violate state regulations for septage treatment, that all of the buildings on the site must comply with our land development code, including the tire store to the front and the t-shirt sales on the south side, and that it is good for just the 5-year period. Mr. Patel asked for an administrative renewal of the permit, but again, this was supposed to be a temporary situation, and it's become quite long. So any questions?
So, did we determine that someone was living in there?
Someone is living in the RV, yes.
And he did remove the second RV already?
Yes, ma'am. He removed this RV. When I asked him about the tarp that's on the existing RV, he mentioned that he was planning to use this what would be a carport type structure to put over the existing RV to eliminate, I guess the issue or the concern is rain getting into the RV and causing a leakage through the AC unit. Staff, again, is recommending denial. We are really concerned about the shape of this RV and think that if there is a recommendation for approval that a mobile home might be more prudent, giving Mr. Patel some time to get the RV off and bring a mobile home in that can be permitted through the building department if it's going to be a more permanent structure.
Okay. Is Mr. Patel in the audience today? Mr. Patel, if you'd like to come forward about your request.
My name is Rahul Kumar Patel, 3014 Southeast 45th Court, Ocala, Florida 34480. When we bought the property, we have no idea about the special use permit or anything about the RV. We bought as is, and we just got the letter this year about the special use permit expire. And we remove already 1 RV. Second RV is there since more than 7-8 years, and there is no problem with the sewage or any complaint from any neighborhood. And I know there was a problem with the security, so the previous owner kept for the security purpose only. So that's the main concern for because the location is the way it is located in the neighborhood, the security is main concern. And that's we requested for the renew the special use permit.
Okay. Comments from the board? Any questions?
I remember when this came before us.
I didn't like it the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I'm trying to remember, and Kim, you might have to help me out here. Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was supposed to be a FEMA trailer.
That is the way that it was presented to the board the first time, that it was a FEMA trailer, which may have only meant that it was provided as temporary residence during a natural disaster, because FEMA does
No.
provide those recreational
No.
vehicles at that time.
I remember when this came before the board, and they were asking for it specifically for security. I do remember that. What I'm trying to remember is if they specified that it was gonna be a FEMA trailer.
They
That
did
was what I
specify that it was a
thought.
FEMA trailer. However, the RV that's on the site today is the same RV that was on the site at the time of the first application.
Okay.
So in the second, so let me just,
Go ahead.
so the second one was moved on when?
The second one was there when the first application came in 2012.
So it just never got removed?
It wasn't removed, correct.
Okay, so we never followed up.
We followed up twice and were told that it was going to be removed, but then didn't follow up after that. So you're correct that it wasn't
So
appropriate.
once we followed up twice, why wasn't it brought back to us?
My understanding is that when the code enforcement officer went out there, there was nothing that compelled Mr. Creedle, who was the owner at the time, to necessarily remove the trailer. It was just that they had to disconnect it from any sort of electrical or sewage treatment facility. And so when he kept it there, it was the understanding that it was there, being stored, but not being lived in. And that wasn't the case.
Are they allowed to store it?
I'm gonna have to defer to my director.
I didn't think they were allowed to be stored like that.
Yeah, it's B5 zone.
So
I
they
mean, you
are.
can do a lot of things in B5, yes, sir. You can sell RVs, that's for sure. I mean,
And at the time, they had a restaurant in there, and is the restaurant still there?
a tire shop,
Yeah, I have a restaurant, they just closed and looking for the new owner. They move from different location because the place is very small. They need a bigger space because they're 60 seated and they need at least 100 and more people. We don't have enough space. Yeah.
So why were you using a 55-gallon drum for the disposal?
We have no idea. We bought the property in 2016 and I just got the letter this year. So that's why we removed the one trailer. If I knew there is the problem, we take out long ago. You can ask her. As soon as we got the letter, I call her and we take out the trailer immediately. The previous trailer, not this one. This is connected with the septic tank. The one is right now existing, it is connected with the septic tank and with the, what is the power, water line is Sunshine Utility water.
So it's currently hooked up? to
Yeah, since
Sunshine.
Mr. Creedle has the property, it is connected with the septic tank and Sunshine Utility water is supplying. But the second one was, there's a barrel and we don't know that. When I got a letter, we remove everything and I asked Mr. Bill also, I forgot because he is 87-year-old and I cannot say anything else, yeah.
Just commenting on the barrel, I mean.
That was
When
on
did we
the
find
one
that?
that's
That was
been
the old one, yeah,
removed.
thank
Right.
you. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
doing
This one now is, does it have its own septic system or is it hooked?
Building
in?
has this is a septic tank for whole business. Yeah,
Okay, for
it's
the
connected,
entire
yeah, yeah.
business. Okay, okay.
Well, after
When did we
take
find the
this,
second
I'll come back. I've
trailer?
got-
Okay.
We
Under
found
this gentleman's ownership or the previous
under
gentleman?
this gentleman's ownership. that it
Under
was-
this gentleman's ownership?
Yes.
So it was being used?
My understanding it was being used. There was a complaint filed with DEP, and they went out to the site and didn't see anything. There was there were a lot of missed opportunities with this site.
No, somebody said there is a pond and somebody putting the seats in that, but it was wrong. And I talked to one of the DP guy, and he says he satisfied with everything.
So when you bought the business, did you look at the land development code or the special use permit that was with the property?
We don't know anything about the special use permit, but we know there's M1 zone, so you can use for anything. That's but I don't know anything about the special use permit. Anything.
I'm gonna guess that when a title company does a title search, and we need to ask this question, that a special use permit doesn't come up.
Unless it's filed, OR
yeah.
book and
It's
deed
just something that's
number.
done through the county.
Yeah.
So there's, unless Mr. Creedle disclosed to them that what was
Yeah.
happening
Right, you
was-
probably wouldn't know unless you had a, you know, I mean, I'm guessing other folks track it because they have business licenses or occupational licenses of some sort, right? So they know when the transaction of the seller happens.
Typically, we would require a reconnect permit if there's a change of occupancy in the building, but not if there's just a change of ownership
Of
of the
ownership.
of
building.
the entire property,
Right.
and that's
Right.
what's happened.
That's what's happened, both in this case and in the Fort McCoy case, right?
Because you can see about the second trailer, as soon as I get the letter, I take out everything, next day, within a couple of days, yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Let's-
Because we want to follow the code and regulation, you know. We want to stay in a business for a long time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Patel. We're gonna open it for public comment.
Okay.
And,
Don't go anywhere.
yeah, you may be asked to return, so if you'd like to have a seat right there at the front row. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? If so, if you could please come forward now. I don't think we have anyone in the audience, so I will bring it back to the board. Commissioner O'Brien, I think you've got some thoughts on this?
I do. So, Mr. Patel, can you come back up?
Yes, ma'am.
So unfortunately, it wasn't disclosed to you that the RV was there under a special use permit.
Correct.
And it wasn't disclosed to you that it's not supposed to be an RV. It was originally brought to this board. It was supposed to be a FEMA trailer.
Yeah, even I talked to Mr. Bill Criddle today morning. He was at the my store, and I asked him, I have a meeting today, this and that, and you say he say he bought from the FEMA trailer. Although auction was here, and he bought during that time, but he don't have any paperwork. Because I asked him, if you have any paperwork, please give it to me. I can represent to the committee, but he don't have it, and I cannot expect anything because he cannot hardly walk even nowadays. He cannot remember. I cannot force him to provide me now.
Okay.
But today also he told me same thing. He bought the 5 trailer. 2 he put in that property and 3 I don't know what he did. He sold or something. I don't know.
Do you have a title for the?
No, that's what I'm saying. I asked him today, but I cannot force him, ma'am, because he even hardly walk.
Well, but we should be able to, you should be able to track something down on that.
It's tough with those.
Yeah,
Has
is
it
it?
been
It is. It's a different animal. That's why I think even when you buy them, there is something different about them. I went to an auction to look at them too, and they were all. That's what I'm saying. They were all different. Although most of them, they actually had designed the interior differently, where it was kind of a blank slate, but they had like bigger refrigerators and bigger beds, traditional furniture in there versus what you would go to an RV store and see. RV furniture. Most of them had it was more of an open space with a bigger kitchen because they were putting people in it for a certain amount of days, and I think the federal requirements made them
So Commissioner
upsized from mini fridges and things like that.
Would you say that there's a possibility this is a FEMA trailer?
Yeah, it could very well be. I mean, it could have been, at that auction, you could have bought anything, and FEMA had bought everything. I think FEMA had bought everything they could order, everything they could buy off a lot, you know what I mean? And so when they sold them after Katrina, they had a huge sale here. And that's probably, is that right?
That's he told me.
Really probably where it's from.
Okay.
So it very well could have been a FEMA trailer.
Man, you outdid me on this one.
I did.
Okay, so with that said,
I was looking for something for the hunting camp.
I was gonna ask you what you
Yeah,
were doing that
yeah.
auction.
So,
all right,
but I think we need to move. I mean, Commissioner, I don't know how long you want to let this thing sit here. I think we need to move away from it and either have him build something onto his addition. I don't even know if I love the whole mobile home deal, but this thing's only going to be good for so much longer. It's already what? It's
more than 10 years even.
Yeah, I mean.
Who lives there?
do you, who's living there?
I have a
now?
guy who lives there, take care of my property and
Security.
everything.
Okay, so you
Just
do
one
have
guy
a guy
only, yeah.
that's living there for security.
Only one guy, yes. And it helps, believe me, because the way the neighborhood is there.
All
But
right,
putting it under these carports and stuff like that, I mean, this.
well, what if we give him some time
Let's get something better.
to do something different? I mean, I understand why he wants to have somebody on site.
I'm okay with
I
that.
understand that, but I do think that it is gonna need to eventually be something different than what we have there now, and it needs
We
to
can put
be-
some blocks around it, supporting with the blocks. Right now it's on a jack. I can do blocks.
It's on jacks.
Construction on a.
Actually, Mr.
What
Patel,
if we at least make them put in, or ask them to, you know, I mean, they can't match the interior, but maybe in color, we at least a metal carport that goes over it, like an you know, like you put in a mobile RV in.
Mm-hmm.
At least put that over it so it looks halfway decent, and the opening being opposite. From
We're
the
doing
road.
painting. We're going to start painting work. So we're going to paint the RV too, and maybe I can do the carport was there, but it was destroyed because of the water. So we're going to put the new carport.
So what
No, we
we're
need a-
saying is,
Sorry.
tarp is gonna
tarp
have.
carport.
No.
The tarp carport's gonna have to go.
Let's just put up because I have to repair the AC, and my technician is out of town
Okay.
for this weekend, so he'll be back. So carport will go. Yeah.
Okay.
That's not. It was not there even first time when she came. We just put it right now because of the heavy rain, and my technician was not there, so I have to put temporary to
so it
protect.
sounds like what we're gonna offer is a pole barn type hard shell over.
Well, you can actually buy
Three-sided.
metal carports.
On top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with the stand with the steel on that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Metal roof like kind of right.
Right.
Put a
Metal
three-side-
shed on top of that.
Three-sided, 20-foot high metal carport, painted to the same color as the building, with the entrance or a door rear facing or something like that. You have to leave one side open though, because
Well,
I
you
don't want to
don't-
get in trouble with
So you're
Containment or
you're
whatever.
you're wanting sides all the way around it,
three-sided.
3-sided.
Kind of takes away from his security part.
Yeah, I
Because
don't, I'm not, I'm
You want 'em
fine
to be
with
able to
just
look.
the
Just
metal
an
roof.
over
Yeah,
the
And then it
roof.
needs to get off the jacks.
Yeah. I will do that. I don't want to do anything now until you give me the decision because I don't want to spend any extra money until you say
Sure.
me do this. And I just talked to Ms. Kemp, same thing. Once you get decision, then I will do accordingly.
Okay, so let's hammer this out. Metal roof over,
Okay.
and then it has to come off the jacks.
Yes, ma'am.
On the blocks.
Yes.
Commissioner, what do you want to see around the bottom?
Some siding.
How about some
can do
grass
that.
and a garden and
Yep.
some water
Or
features?
It will look
Skirting.
decent, yeah.
He's gonna
Also, it
skirt
will
it.
bring my property better. It looks property better.
I would,
Hurricane
I wouldn't be,
I saw something on like that DUI, you know, RV, mini house things. How about you put a mini home there so we can get them started? Like a tiny house.
A tiny house.
Yeah, a tiny house.
It is right now.
So Mr.
How
Patel,
about that?
you know how expensive those are?
But they want something permanent, Commissioner.
I
We
understand.
did this first. They said, "Hey, I need a couple years so I can build out something inside." Right?
are
I
they
don't
were
remember
gonna
that
put
part.
somebody to live inside?
I don't
I
remember
think they
that
were
part.
originally going to create some space either inside or.
I don't remember,
What?
I
a
don't
different
think
one.
so.
No, oh, we got it
No,
wrong.
I think you've got that wrong. Yeah.
That's all right. I'm wrong most of the time.
Old cases.
I mean, if he can get it to where it
Yes.
looks
The one you told me, I can do that.
presentable.
I would
it's-
rather the poor guy
Very reasonable.
get a shed like some people do and put it out like a little tiny house than this thing.
Can you actually live in a shed here in
No.
Marion County?
Absolutely.
I don't think you can.
Not legally.
You can waive the right. That's what a tiny house is. You waive the right.
No,
to
tiny
have it over
houses are
900.
built to specifications.
Okay.
They're an RV.
So here's what we are proposing, Mr. Patel. A metal roof over, skirting around it. Will there be some tie downs on this?
Hurricane tie downs.
Like some hurricane tie downs? And is there anything else that needs to be addressed here?
Well,
And just one,
Madam Chair,
yes.
now when we have folks come in and set up at our RV parks, do we have them put tie downs down?
But is this going to be long-term for security?
It's
Well,
hooked up to a septic tank. Of course it is.
Yeah, it is.
Well, so technically an RV does
It's-
too. So hooks into a septic system. If you're out there at Salt Springs
I don't even know
Resort.
if the-
In an RV park, right? But this is
Yeah.
not an RV park.
yeah. So,
Whatever you guys want to do, I don't care.
okay.
We want it as safe as possible for the person who's living there.
Yeah, but
So
in
whatever
the case of an
code-
emergency, or, I'm sorry, in the case of any kind of a storm coming through, they would have to
It is already,
evacuate. You'd make
two
them
storm
go.
was there and everything was good, no problem.
No problem, they wrote it out.
So they've already gone through storms
Yeah,
in the past.
guy was
is what
there,
you're saying.
it was living there, we provide the generator and it was okay.
All right, so
Well, they probably went, they
strike
probably
the
evacuated to a
last,
shelter.
tie
They were securing the
downs.
property.
Metal roof over and
Help me.
skirt
You
it.
stayed there, right?
Yeah, he helped me.
That's right, I know.
Do I have a motion?
Motion. Metal
By
skirt,
Commissioner Gold with a metal roof and to skirt it. I need a second.
Second.
Second
Off
by,
the jacks.
well, that's the purpose, yeah. Second by Commissioner Bryant. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
One question, any time limit on that or
Not for tie downs.
Yeah, no tie downs, whatever code.
any time limit for that? I will start as early as possible, most probably by next week.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay,
much,
so wait a
Mr.
minute,
Patel.
Mr. Patel.
Sorry.
The time frame,
The time frame is,
2024, wasn't it?
Well, for the special
5
use,
years.
Yeah,
okay,
2024.
so in all honesty and in all seriousness here, you've
Yes.
got 5 years.
Yes, that was already told last
Look,
meeting, yeah.
look,
Yeah.
you need to be thinking ahead.
Yes, yes.
Because in 5 years, we're not gonna wanna see an RV still sitting there.
Yes.
If you're gonna need to have somebody there for security, you need to start looking to try to do something a little more permanent.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Patel. How many more of these do we have?
We're gonna go check in 30 days.
14C5.
Oh, my goodness. I love this job. I'm just saying.
Why are you quitting?
Yeah.
I love this job. It's phenomenal. You can't buy this stuff.
So, Mr. Risen,
Chris Rising, Go Services. Our next item, it'll be case number, item number 14C5, case number 190606SU. This is a request for a special use permit for horse feed and hay sales on a non-agricultural production property. Staff has recommended denial of the request. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission did make a recommendation of approval using the alternative approval conditions. The key item in this case is the site is designated rural lands. It doesn't allow general commercial uses. The county's land development code provisions do allow an operator that produces hay on property to also import hay for separate sales, and that is a permissible activity for Marion County. In the past, the county commission has approved limited special use permits that then allow those producers to actually provide bagged feed for livestock and hay and so on in that respect. But general commercial purposes, we look for them to actually have a commercial land use designation or a rural activity center land use designation within Marion County. This site is located off north or south US 41 in the Dunellen region, north of the city of Dunellen. And then it's in the vicinity of Rainbow Lakes Estates and Lake Tropicana Ranchettes, and some horse farm areas that are out there above the Rainbow Lakes Estates area. Again, staff is recommending denial of the request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request with the alternative approval conditions that have been provided. At this point, staff will look for questions and the public comment.
So, Madam Chair.
yes, Commissioner
So-
Zalek?
So it's all the accessory sales that's not making it work?
Correct, yes, sir. It's all the creep of the inventory that turns into
Right.
all the
We've
other
had this
products and
a few
materials.
times, and it's the problem is that all the other folks that have had to build stores and do all that
Correct.
stuff.
Yes, sir.
Have a really hard time when they can just.
Right. An example would be the Barantini Hay Corporation, which is on Northwest US 27
Yeah.
at Highway 326. They're
Well, and
actually in the
Spar-
rural activity center.
the Spar
They have the
folks-
correct land use and zoning for their activity, so they are a full-service facility.
Yeah.
Commissioner Zalek, did
No,
you?
no, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Is the applicant here? If you'd like to come forward, please. If you'll just give your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Lillian Martin, 2251 South Highway 41, Dunellen, Florida.
Thank you, Miss Martin. So, want to share with us how we got to where we are today?
Yes, my husband and I moved on this property and bought it in 1999. Moved on it in 2000, and has been in the agricultural commercial business our whole life. The building that's on there was designed for hay sales and feed sales. He passed away in 2013. At the time, right now, I have an opportunity to, the only other feed store in the area, they're about 2 miles down the road, and they are running out of room. They have no place to grow, and my setup is perfect for bringing the hay in and storing the hay and unloading, and we have a drive-through for the customers. And they would like to eventually buy this farm, and they would like to start using the facilities because they have nowhere to, they're expanding and they have nowhere to go. And they're basically, we're only feed store out in that area right now. So the community needs it. The community is really looking forward to having the store. And there's a list of things that they want me to comply to, and that's no problem. I can get the building re-inspected and get the road. The road was designed for large trucks. It has a big wide driveway, and we put fresh stone in it every year. We're very willing to do whatever you ask us to do to make it work. The community needs it.
Madam Chair?
The other
Yes,
feed store is here too.
So, if that's the case and you want to sell the different things, why not just go through the commercial, I mean, they would just have to go through the commercial site plan process, right?
What would occur is this site would need a future land use designation amendment to request commercial and then an appropriate zoning class for the property. And then they would go through that. The existing structure that was built as an ag exempt structure, so it does not have any commercial approved permitting as a commercial structure for
That's the
commercial
problem.
activity.
At the time, we was instructed that we didn't need a permit, which is
Well,
why.
you don't need it if you're producing it. If
And
you're,
we can produce it, the back part of the farm, it would work out very well. We only put young horses out there 3 months out of the year. It's not during the growing season. We can seed it, that way it'll get a little fertilizer. We can seed it in the spring, and we can harvest the hay. It's not a problem. The whole back
and I
part.
understand that, and you're more than welcome to sell that under an ag exemption. The problem is the day you bring in somebody else's product from a feed store or something, you are now a commercial business and no longer an ag business. It's not what the federal government set up as an ag exemption, right? It's the same thing. So if tomorrow I went and had a piece of land and I built a pole barn under ag, right?
We would like
Park
to
my
do-
boat under it, it's no longer ag.
We would like to turn this into the local feed store.
Then you need to go through a land use change, a zoning change, and get the building to a commercial status, and not just a special use permit, right?
That's correct.
I mean, if you want to get there, that's the road. We can help you to try to put the pieces in place.
Yeah, when I didn't
Get you
know,
some
right.
temporary relief maybe, but it's not going to get you to where, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that it's going to get you to where you want to go, because you're not going to be able to get there under an ag exemption to
Right.
sell those kind of products.
Right. At the time, I didn't know.
No, I understand.
My husband had a agricultural commercial dealership.
Right.
And I thought that's what I was going for. But, he did all the business. I didn't do any of the business.
Right.
And I didn't know any of this was what I needed to do. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes now, and they're extremely interested in buying the place, so they can move their feed store on the property.
So, Mr. Risen?
And just to let you know, I did have an opportunity to speak with one of the employees with the Dunellen Farm and Feed operation and discuss with them the issues regarding it. And I think there were some issues that they were not aware of, that it wasn't a commercial building, for instance. And I discussed with them that if this was something that they were still interested in continuing to pursue, they could potentially have this become something of a satellite to their main operation, which is currently in place. Set up this system where they have the production in the back where they can produce some of their own. They bring in the imported hay, and then special use permit says they can have the bagged feed and do that. And that would actually give them an opportunity to kind of test this actually functioning and working for their purposes. And then they could then look to pursue a plan amendment if they wanted to take that route, for instance.
And they're here and they're willing to come up and talk and.
I mean, what I think, maybe we do something like just a two-year hard special use permit. This thing ends in 2 years. They get to test the market. You get to figure out if this is a marketable plan. And then if it is, then after, within the 2 years, you're coming in for a comp plan amendment and transferring it. Otherwise, it reverts back and goes to strictly what you produce on property. I don't know. What do you think?
I was actually going to suggest that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that we're going to open up for public comment in a minute, or the
Yeah.
other part of the applicants here too. So, Madam Chair, we need to let them come up.
I will. As soon as you all are ready.
Yeah, I'm ready to.
Okay, we're going to open this for public comment, Ms. Martin.
Thank you.
You may want to stay close. So do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item? I'll invite you to come forward.
Hello, my name is Kent Wall. We live at 6650 Southeast US Highway 41 in Morriston. We are Donnell and Feed, and we understand everybody was telling us we're outgrowing our spot now. Why don't you go down to Lily Martin's? They had a feed store, they had a hay, they did really well, had a well-known name. Go down there. Well, we just found out that it wasn't a commercial. And then everybody, 1,500 people with signed petitions that we had, didn't know it wasn't commercial. Why wouldn't it not been commercial? There's commercial buildings across the street. There's a bar 0.6 of a mile on the same side. There's the coal plant right down there. If you would open it up, you can see all of that is commercial property.
Yeah.
So it was almost heartbreaking when they said, no, you can't do this. Because it's a perfect location. When we're talking about our store, we're in a little spot right now. In the last 3 years, we've tripled what we've been done. So it's too small where we're at. There's really, the biggest thing where it comes in is where the money comes in. Like you suggested, do a 2-year thing. We can't afford just to try something. We either got to do this and do it right the first time, or we lose a lot of money. Our storefront, what we sell with between the hay and the feed, is just a little bit of wormer and dogs and cats stuff. Some little things that need to be in an air conditioner building. Little, not big. Nothing huge. But if y'all are horse people in Ocala that we are, 95% of our hay does not get grown here. It's out of state. It's the alfalfa, it's the Timothy, it's the orchard, it's the mixed grasses. The coastal here is for our cow people. If you look at people and say, you sell coastal to your horse, they'll be telling you you're crazy, but we do. And we do have good suppliers here locally that we get our hay from. Growing it on there, if we needed to grow it, but that's just not, you just can't sell coastal. You've got to have the alfalfa, you got to have the stuff. And she had Mr. Martin had all the contacts, he had a real good business there. So basically what we want to do is try to change that to commercial for us. If we got to go through whatever kind of steps that we got to go through, because we have no idea. We're just good old country people that just want to open up a feed store, and it's doing good. But now it's like
you just have to meet the same requirements that every other feed store does.
Exactly.
And so under the presumption today, once you start bringing in that other stuff, it's no longer.
Right, it needs to be commercial, because we can't be just limited on.
Right, you don't want to limit yourself.
Because if we just sold hay and feed, we'd be out of business tomorrow.
Thank you.
So maybe we could get somebody on our staff, and maybe even a couple folks, because I think if we could get a round table for this gentleman, Monir, where he can sit down with building, sit down with zoning, sit down with engineering, all the different steps, so we can lay out the process that you have to go through. I think that would help him make the business decision whether the ROI is going to be right for you.
Right, because if not, then we need to try to find something.
Right, you need to try to find something different. Yeah.
But this place is just 2 miles down the road. We wouldn't never lose none of our customers, and then, you know.
It's probably worth the
perfect
investment for
it.
you.
It's perfect.
So, yeah, what's the,
I don't think he's interested, or what I'm hearing is that
the special use?
you want to do it the right way, so the special use permit is not really going to work
Well,
for you.
Yeah, because what happens in 2 years and
Right.
it says, no, we're not changing this to commercial.
No.
then
What
you're out
we were
of-
trying to tell you is here's what gives you the time to do your process, to sell some things there if you already have a deal on the table, and start working now through the land development process, through, you know, fixing the building. It gives you some time to spread out that capital cost instead of having to
Hit it all at once.
hit it all at once.
Yeah.
It's up to you. You don't have to do it that way.
It's going to take
I'm
a
just-
process.
Right,
It
it's
won't
Going
happen
to be
quickly.
expensive.
Right. And we understand that. It's just that we couldn't keep one place and try to keep another place and
Okay.
have,
And it may well be worth your time and investment.
right.
So,
Commissioner, I would offer to
Yeah.
him, we have the DRC staff, they meet every Thursday morning to go with applicants over the process and what all needs to be done related specifically to their development and what they want to do.
All right, and I've got a couple questions. So in your thought process, have you done any investigation into what it's gonna cost you to fix that little building there?
That building is a steel metal building. It's probably, you go in there right now, you're gonna say it's up to code. There's nothing, you know, that probably is not to code right now. I mean, when Mr. Martin built that stuff, he built it right the first time too. You know, it's just a metal building.
Okay,
Has
so,
anybody been out there, you know, to look at it, any kind of zoning, or even people even
so
are out
that's
there
a
that live
great
in that area?
question. Has anybody worked with this applicant as to what the real issue and what the ultimate goal was?
That's where we had our conversations with them. The difficulty that we have is when they start getting into all those other sales of all those other materials, that's what necessitates the commercial land use designation and zoning classification.
So this is not that process, though?
Correct.
We're not doing that process today. We can't take action on that process today. There's a long process for that, and we have people who can help you do that, which would, I guess the option is to start working with our DRC group, which meets every Thursday morning at 8:30, and we'll get someone on staff to give you that detail.
Okay, thank you.
And that sounds like that's the option to go if the special use permit is not warranted at this time while you go through that long process.
We have a list of folks, and you could probably get that from, you know, any one of our
Sam.
team. And we have a list of folks that go through that process on a regular basis. You know, and you'll probably have to hire an engineer or somebody.
When we talked to Sam and other Joe, they was always say it's not in our agenda for that to be commercial.
What's that?
It's not in their agenda for that to be a commercial property.
And where did that information come from?
I talked with Mr. Sam one time about it.
Okay.
when we
Right, he
here
was
at
just
that-
saying that the land use today doesn't match commercial.
And what we-
Okay, that's all right. We're gonna get you some
All right.
help.
Okay.
and I have
All right.
one other
Yes.
suggestion.
Commissioner Bryant.
I think there was a communication gap somewhere along the line, big time, of what they really wanted to do and what was gonna be in their best interest. So I would like to talk about what we charged them for them to come before
Right.
this board for that special use permit. And, if
Apply it
they're,
towards.
I think that we need to
Just
take some
refund it.
consideration that it either needs to be refunded, or we need to take that and put it towards, if we can do this, Mr. Mentor. Saw you
I
looking
just
at
want you
me.
to keep in mind that this gentleman was not the applicant, it's Ms.
Right.
Martin.
Well, but for the applicant,
Buying.
this is,
Yeah, we paid for the,
I just think that what came before us today was not the appropriate thing to come before us today for what they wanted to do, for what everybody really wanted to do. And I don't know if it was communication on our part, communication on their part, but maybe we can put that, if they decide to move forward with a zoning change on the property, that maybe we can put those fees towards that. And for the applicant.
Mr. Mentor, is there a problem doing that?
I think the board has, you've heard the reasons, I think the board has the discretion to make a finding that under these circumstances you could.
That will just credit their account.
Right.
If they
Fine
try,
with
if
that.
you choose to go through a different planning process.
Well, you have to talk to Ms. Martin.
Well,
So-
she's gonna be in the same deal.
yeah.
It'll
Okay,
apply to her.
so could we ask somebody to join
Ms. Martin and, okay,
So
great.
move, yeah, and I don't even think we need to take action on this.
No.
It's not
because we
being
need to
tabled, it's-
Redo what we're doing here.
It's just
It's pulled.
pulled.
Okay, it's pulled.
We have pulled, Ms. Martin, we'll have somebody working with you shortly. And good luck. Congratulations on the growth of your business in the Dunella market. And we hope that this will work out, that you'll continue to be able to expand and serve the community even better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I look forward to getting an invitation to your ribbon cutting.
Oh, thank you.
Next item is 14C6. Zoning change from an R1 single-family dwelling to an R4 mixed-use residential.
Bear with me for just a moment, please. This, Chris Risen again with Growth Services. This request is for a rezoning from R1 to R4. The property is located within the Silver Springs CRA, located north of State Road 40 in the historic neighborhood that is located there. That neighborhood, however, has largely developed with manufactured homes. Staff does acknowledge, including the portions which are R1 because they went in at times when manufactured homes were permitted within that area. Staff did have a concern as this is an isolated lot within the R1 area, so staff did recommend denial of the request, but alternatively noted that a PUD might be acceptable and then provided for alternative conditions. The Planning and Zoning Commission did agree with staff that a PUD would be appropriate, but instead they did recommend a modification on the conditions that it simply be required that it be at least a double-wide manufactured home equivalent that would be provided within there, and that it would not be required to have a carport or garage. So at this point, staff is not recommending approval of the straight R4, but a PUD with conditions would be advisable, and we defer to the commission to which set of conditions you might prefer.
Okay, do we have the applicant with us today? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Kevin Robertson, 881 Northeast 120th Place, 34479. And I looked at the property. It's for my mother. She's on fixed income. We were looking for something that had a septic tank and a well, something that we could put a mobile home on. At the time, I was not really aware of the different zonings. I just looked at the area, which is primarily mobile homes, and went based off of that. So I purchased it with that intent of putting a mobile home on there, using the septic and the well that's already on the property. I did have the septic certified. It is in good condition. I haven't moved forward with anything else because of the cost on whether or not I could put a mobile home on there to find out if I should invest any more money in it.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson.
Have you located a mobile home? I mean,
Not yet. I'm waiting for a decision.
and what type are you looking for?
Originally, I was just looking for a inexpensive mobile home to put on there to rehab, but once I realized that it probably wouldn't suit the standards that the county has set out, I'll probably have to purchase a newer double-wide that would fit the need. It would be a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or 2-bedroom, 2-bath, double-wide.
Okay, we're gonna take some public comment, and we'll be right back with you shortly. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this issue? If so, I invite you to come forward. If not, I'll bring it back to the board. Commissioner Zalek?
So Chris, can you show us what, is there a site-built home right across the street?
No, sir. In fact, let me get to you.
By the rooftops, it's hard.
What you'll notice is the yellows are the site-built homes in that area. You can see it is surrounded by manufactured homes. They were put in over a different number of years. So this one is the one vacant one. There's a couple other that are vacant. This red area actually is a manufactured home RV park where there aren't individual lots any longer. They're being held in common by an owner with a series of homes on that as an RV type or mobile home park.
Really?
This is a very old subdivision that's been there for many years.
So can you say why it's not compatible?
The concern there is that it ends up with creating a spot now of the R4 mixed into the R1, which is a concern that we're trying to keep that cohesive area. The existing manufactured homes that are in the R1 area, they're historic. They've been there since the 80s and some even beforehand. So the idea is that when they came out, they would be needing to conform to current requirements.
So you think that over time it's gonna transfer to site-built homes? in there?
Transition potentially. An alternative too is if this is an area where we would look to increase densities to promote revitalization and redevelopment, these properties could end up becoming developed even more intensely, for instance.
Because it is in our CRA area.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
So what was there a mobile home on this site prior?
Yes, sir. There was a single wide on the home previously in the past. That's why there's an existing well and septic tank on the site.
And they don't get any kind of, they're not grandfathered in. Isn't there a certain amount of time that you can replace a mobile with a mobile?
There has been, but this is one has been gone for quite some time.
Okay.
And what's the size of the property?
0.2 acres. It's a quarter acre type lot.
Okay. So, commissioners, on this one, Chris, I understand the reasoning behind staff to go with the PUD, but since he's going to go buy a new double-wide mobile home, it's probably gonna be 20, 25 years before he pulls that out of there. I mean, we're not gonna be consistent if we've got that one lot as PUD versus R4 surrounded by R1.
Unless we buy it ourselves and start buying property with,
I don't think we're gonna, are we doing that right now?
it's not budgeted at this point in time.
You mean CDBG type?
I mean, that is an option.
Have we taken public comment yet?
No.
Can you?
Yes, we
can
did,
you-
and no
can
one
you
is in the public to talk.
Bring that map out.
Why is this so hard to
Which, I mean,
Can we get a larger view of what's around it?
It's a mess.
It's all mobile homes.
But I guess that depends on, what do we want to do in that area?
We can't force people to pull mobile homes out and build site-built homes.
No, all we can do is buy them as they go. But we've really not put forth that.
and I will note, this is the neighborhood that has been one of those that have been looked at for the CDBG program, as this area doesn't have water systems or sewer systems. It's just north of the Springhead and so on.
So the infrastructure is not there.
Correct.
It's just on the north side of 35th Street.
That's what I was.
I'm gonna move for approval of the R4 zoning.
So I've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant with a second by Commissioner Moore to approve the R4 with the mobile. Any further discussion?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
What's R3? Just doesn't allow you to put the mobile in?
It's multi-use, isn't it?
Multifamily without the mobile?
R3 does allow manufactured home, yes, sir.
I mean, if we're looking for future density growth, doesn't the R3 give us a better potential over the long term?
Potentially this, though, being a medium-dense residential land use designation for the site, and being only a quarter acre lot, they're pretty much, it's one house on it. They'd have to assemble more lots to be able to do that, so. And potentially change the land use designation, which, as there was another meeting that was discussing potentially future amendments out of the CRA master planning may come from that.
Why wouldn't it be
At
better to
some
look at
point
this
in
as
time.
a group of the zoning designation and look to change it that way? I'm just saying, I mean, all the rest of those are R1s with mobile homes on them.
Yes, sir.
So just leave.
Right, because I mean, what's somebody gonna do every time they have to do a zoning? Or if they want, I mean, if we're going to allow them to put a fresh mobile in, then why are we keeping it R1? For those 10 or 15 lots or whatever it is.
Well, because if they pull one out and they wanna put one back, there's a certain amount of time
I
that
don't
you
think
can
they
pull
do. They
one
put
out
it
and
in
put one
under
back
no
on.
zoning. I don't think they
I
can.
believe
If it's
so.
already there, correct?
What's the timeframe?
What code allows you to do that?
Do they have a permanent allowance to be able to take out a mobile home and put in one in? Or is it
I think we talked about that once, but I don't know that it ever passed.
It's a 12-month period. They
Yeah,
have
you
to
have 12
place
months.
it within
If
12
you
months.
pull one out, you've got 12 months to put another one back. In R1 zoning, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But your motion was to take it to R4
Yeah. That's, I mean,
with the mobile.
with the, and now, are
Can't you
you,
just grant them a waiver then, if that's the case?
And
To
leave
put
it
one
R1.
in? Can you do that instead of changing the zoning?
We have not had that provision in our land development code.
No.
Because it's a platted R1 type zone subdivision. So that expressly was not provided for in R1 subdivisions that have that there.
You
Even
know
though
how long it's been gone?
I don't recall right now.
real quick question?
Mm-hmm.
So, and Mr. Mentor stepped away. If we grant the R4 zoning, but, and I think that this would make it conditional zoning if we said R4, but you have to put a double wide in there, correct?
Correct, and that would not be.
Okay, so that's probably why you went with PUD.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because of the conditional zoning. All right, so I'm gonna withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw second.
I'm gonna deny the staff recommendation, or deny the R4, go with the staff recommendation with the PUD, with the,
And I do want to qualify, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation was to have the PD, but just have it be a double wide and not require a carport.
No
So you may want to choose that one over the staff recommendation, which was meeting all of the standards.
Okay.
that's what I'm going with right
Okay, second.
So,
Which one?
P and Z recommendation.
Recommendation.
which, does that include the carport?
It does not,
It
but it
doesn't.
does require a double wide.
Okay, so the motion is to deny but approve the PUD with a double wide without a carport,
Yes,
which is staff recommendation, and that,
If he wants to put a carport on there, he can.
yes, ma'am.
All I'm saying is we do definitely sound like government, right? It's like, we're gonna deny it before we approve it, you know? Love it.
so that's a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Good to
Any opposed? We hope, Mr. Roberson, that you'll be able to put your mother-in-law in a nice double wide and she'll live happily ever after there. So
He didn't say
thank
it was for his mother-in-law? Or
Yes.
mother?
Mother.
Mother. I was about to say,
Oh, I
you might
thought
be a really good guy if you're
mother-in-law.
gonna put your mother-in-law up.
Sorry.
That's pretty awesome.
I heard mother-in-law. Maybe
Yeah,
that's-
you were just thinking he was a really good guy. Much.
He is a really good guy. Taking care of mom. Taking care of mom is a
Taking
good
care of
guy.
It's all the same. Mom, mother-in-law, we become one family when that happens.
Not in every case.
Okay. We are next with the
I
Lake
definitely am not
Louise
having enough
property,
You need some sleep.
14C7.
Kennewick Growth Services. This is 190711 SU. Applicant is Lake Louise LLC and John Rudiani. The request is for hay operations in R1. The original request was hay and cattle operations, but through the process, we've talked it down to just hay.
Why would y'all do that? I would love to take my walk down through there in the evening and
get
see
to see
cows
cows.
grazing.
Are you serious?
I-
What's wrong with you?
It's a county-owned property, I mean,
Location that cows shouldn't be. They belong in the rural cow area.
Thank you.
Wait
Tell
a
her
minute.
again.
There are
Tell her
plenty-
again
no,
why
no,
you didn't
no.
do that.
There are plenty of properties along that stretch of road
Right.
that have agricultural things going on.
It's,
within a mile, there's
Well-
horses.
while true, but
Ken, tell her again why.
would
Okay,
cows or people be a half mile from the hospitals?
so,
I love what Mr. Rudiani has done on the property, cleaning it up and clearing it out.
Right.
You should have done it 20 years ago.
So obviously we all know where the location is.
so, hold on, y'all, I know it's been a long day. Go ahead, just go
Okay.
ahead.
So the size is 88.9 acres and it's R1 single family on medium density residential. So this is just a map showing all of the urban amenities that people need, not cows, within a 2-mile radius of the site.
I love this guy.
You got cows, Mr. Rudiani.
Oh my
Come
goodness.
on down.
Let him finish.
And so with just a request for hay operations, and we've talked to the applicant, he does have plans to start developing the site soon. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, and the conditions are, consistent with the plan. Cannot fertilize or irrigate, and if they do use a fence, staff would request a 3-board fence along the boundary of the property to be consistent with the surrounding area.
You gonna make them replace every shrub and greenery that he took out of when clearing?
No. And that's that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Rudiani?
I love how they clear it first, then
Well, that's
open space.
so the cattle makes you put it back.
Jack can buy you a cow for your house.
Mr. Rudiani, what are your plans for this property?
Well, one thing you're doing is the county's looking at it for a potential veterans
Yes, sir.
nursing home. I
Yes,
don't know where
we
we are
are.
on that. The school board's looking at it for a potential school board site. Appreciate you liking cows. I kind of like them myself. But
Very peaceful.
it's an interim use we were looking for there, and it just made some sense. The cows would be eating the grass, but if we're doing a hay operation, which is what we've done there now, we had about 25 to 30 people living on it when we first started. Believe it or not, the way it looks now is pretty much the way it looked in 1959. I've got some aerial pictures of it at that point in time, and Sam used to party there a lot. But
There's
anyway.
a lot of people that used to party there a lot.
We had to get it cleared and stabilized pretty quick, or your engineering department was gonna have a lot of calls about washing and stuff like that. We're doing that now. We planted coastal Bermuda and brown top millet, mowed it down. We are fine with the hay operation. We are not agreeing to any of the conditions, special conditions, because they're unnecessary. We did fertilize it. Now, we did put some fertilizer on when we planted the material and the stuff came up. We gotta get grass to grow. If you got a hay field, you gotta be able to fertilize it. I promise you, we won't waste fertilizer, and we'll put, it's a slow release fertilizer, and we won't contaminate Lake Louise. We're basically in agreement with the special use for just the hay only, but eventually, hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be some exciting things going on there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Do we have
Mr.
anyone? I'm sorry, Ms.
Okay, Mr.
Bryant.
Rudiani, I'm actually really glad to see you here today because I've had so many people ask me, what's going on with that property? What's going on with that property? Thank you.
So we have Laurie Young, I think, in the audience today. If you'd like to come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Laurie Young. My address is 600 Southeast 48th Avenue in Ocala. I am one of the property owners in the middle of the subdivision, which is a platted subdivision since the 1960s, if I'm correct with that. I own it with my sisters. My brother-in-law owns the house next to ours. And I'm glad to hear that John has withdrawn the cattle request. That's really what I was objecting to. No offense, Kathy, to cattle. But let me tell you why we had some concerns about cattle out there. One, primarily the special use request is not consistent with the land use of Marion County, which had been pointed out to P&Z and the P&Z. I don't believe that the cattle operation, again, was consistent with the neighborhood. Number three, cattle or livestock has never been allowed in that subdivision before. I grew up out there in one of the 2 houses that were certainly in the middle there. Yes, did a lot of partying. And number 4, basically, this is really what I was concerned about, is the impacts of cattle or manure on the atmosphere, the odor, potential flies, on the groundwater. I've heard karst topography be mentioned here today, and I can assure you there is a lot of karst topography there on that parcel. Concern about any potential contaminant or contamination with Lake Louise, particularly as it relates to manure flowing downhill and into the lake. I know that John had said that he would berm the areas to prevent any potential contamination, but I can assure you that there's going to be erosion out there because that topography is very significant, and all it would take would be a break in that berm, and Lake Louise would be contaminated. I do wish to point out that Lake Louise is a natural body of water, and I'm pretty sure it is spring-fed, if not certainly aquifer-fed. And then the concern about existing private wells. So I'll make it real quick and just say that I guess I understand the reason or the purpose for this request for John to place cattle out there, but if that's been withdrawn, I'll withdraw my objection as well and would welcome cattle. I would like some clarification because John said he was not going to comply with some of the conditions. So I think that that should be certainly spelled out if he does wish to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience to speak on this matter? If not, Mr. Rudiani, if you could please come back up. You've with.
Most of those conditions were.
What we were just talking about is the irrigation. There's no irrigation out there, and it's really not necessary. We did all kinds of soil tests out there. The soil was awesome, and we will need a little bit of fertilizer to keep that stuff growing, and then we'll keep it mowed. It'll be looking good because it will be a hay operation. So and we did have time. There were several people that showed up that were concerned about the cows, just like Chip said. And we took that, we just took what they said and agreed to do what they wanted us to do.
So at this point in time, there will be some fertilizer put on, there will be no irrigation, there will be no cattle. Was there anything else? Something about a fence?
Oh, no, there's no, if we're not gonna have cattle, we're not gonna have fencing. The biggest problem we had out there is when we first cleared it, people going out there and they were walking around picking up artifacts. And, one guy picked up a tailgate full of artifacts. It's really an artifact, a really neat artifact location. But now that the grass is in there, you really can't find stuff. And our problem wasn't with artifacts. It was by getting sued by somebody that got hurt or got bit by a snake or an alligator. That's where that 11.5-foot alligator showed up, I think, in Chip's yard. There's some awesome stuff in that.
My husband said that they used to go on that property when he was young and catch water moccasins all the time.
I bet, yeah, it's a neat, cool place, but it's gonna be it's gonna stay clean like you see it, and there won't be any fencing. There's really not much traffic, and hopefully now that it's opened up, we won't have dumping. We had a lot of dumping there when it was wooded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks much better.
No buffer of any sort. So we're gonna take away all those.
Right, and
I'd like to just go ahead and make a motion, because it's hay only, and just go ahead and make a motion for hay only, but no conditions, because, it's just open field, so there's no need of doing that, and that'll be my motion, just as long as it's hay only. Now, if you put cows on there, then we have some other issues,
We've got a motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Gold. Was there anything else that you needed to clarify? We're good? That was no conditions?
With the no conditions, that also removes the time limit condition?
Correct.
I would say yes at this point.
no conditions.
As long as that motion is.
Yeah. The only condition is it's hay only. If it goes beyond hay only, then we'll look at, but yeah, no time limit, no conditions means no conditions.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rudiani, for your graciousness on the property as well. And we have one more item today.
Two more.
Two more items. That takes us to 14C8.
14C8 is Kenway Rocker Growth Services again. 190713 SU. The applicant is Sonia and Alfonso Blunt. The request is for a commercial vehicle in A1, and to be specific, the request is for 1 tractor and 2 trailers. There was recently they added a second trailer. They would like a reefer truck parked on the property that would not be turned on. And I believe, so 1 truck, 2 trailers, and a possible 3rd trailer from time to time, because the applicant is an owner-operator, and sometimes the loads aren't on his trailers. The property is on Highway 329, 1.5 miles east of Interstate 75, and it's 3.3 acres on the rural land and A1, as mentioned. And here's a picture of the concept plan. So the house is in the center of the property, and they park the vehicles on the right. No, it's not. Highway 329 is at the north. They originally had a special use permit, and it expired
Thank you, sir.
in 2015, I believe it is, but it was approved in 2013. It's owner-operator. Applicant has been parking on the site for at least 9 years, and there's been no complaints. We've had no opposition. The reason this case was pulled was in the conditions, we have a condition that says no reefer trucks, and they cannot be operated throughout the night. And the applicant asked to have that pulled off because they would like the refrigerated truck, but they don't want to operate it, have it running through the night. And now they've asked for the 2 trailers addition. So staff is recommending approval. P&Z recommended approval. And here are the conditions we've recommended. If you'd like me to go through them. And the applicant is here.
So under number 2, the special use permit would be limited to?
That would be 2 trailers plus an additional, so I guess 3 trailers. Two would have been numbers, and 1 would an additional is, I believe, the request.
I'm not sure I understand, so maybe explain that to me one more time.
Okay. So they own 2 trailers, and from time to time, from what I was told, the job might be a loaded trailer that he has to move, and sometimes that would be stay at his house overnight because he's in and out every day.
So 2 trailers, 2 tractors?
1 tractor, 2 trailers, plus an additional trailer from time to time.
Okay,
Yes.
1 tractor, 3 trailers.
got it. Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Hello.
Good afternoon. I'm Sonia, and this is Alfonso Blunt. Address is 3760 West Highway 329, Reddick, Florida 32686. The reason we're asking for the reefer trailer because he conducts a transport service, and by it being a reefer, he can park it, and the unit doesn't have to be on. He can also use the van part of the trailer without it, without using the reefer part. And as far as our neighborhood, obviously we don't have any neighbors next to us for it to be a problem. And on 329, there's a lot of commercial traffic with, the old Mid-Florida mining being like a couple of blocks down from us, which would not cause like an eyesore to the community or anything like that passing by. And the property is also buffered by a tree line. And what else? That's pretty much it.
Can we go back to the conditions, and did you see those conditions? Were those reviewed with you?
Yes, ma'am. I advised them that it would be the 1 commercial vehicle and the 2 trailers with a possibly 3rd.
Okay. And the paved apron?
Okay, yes. The previous one we had, it gave us the option to use the driveway that was already there.
Okay.
Or put an additional, but now he wants to put an additional driveway because the past permit, special use permit, it gave us the option to park on either side of the property. But with this one, it's only permitting us on the one side, which
Okay.
would need the 2nd driveway.
Okay. So are you in favor or in agreement with that?
Yes, ma'am. That would be fine.
Okay.
I just want to check. Yes,
You're
Commissioners?
actually gonna put in the apron this time?
You, that's,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Cause you know, I mean, it's obvious you using it and didn't do it last time. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to make sure. Is there, and then there's some others on there. So you're aware of all of the conditions that this is?
yes, ma'am. The only one we haven't done is putting the apron on the one side, but we put in the extra hedges, which we
Okay.
done plant like 3 or 4 times. I
Okay.
think the one in the center shows the actual original footage, because the other ones had to be removed and replanted over. But we pretty much did everything that they asked the first time, except for the apron on the one side.
Okay. Commissioners, I'll bring it to the board. Well, excuse me, let me see if there's any public comment.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the audience to speak on this item? If so, I invite you to come forward. If not,
Motion to approve.
Chair, I'll approve.
Second.
I'll second it with our staff going out and checking in 60 days. Make sure the apron's in.
so we've got a motion by Commissioner Gold, second by Commissioner Zalek. Any further discussion?
Sorry, let's do 90. I'm okay
90
with that.
days. 90 days to get the
Give you plenty of time, just in
apron
case you
in.
can't get a contractor. I know it's busy out there.
Okay.
Okay.
They are
All in
slow.
favor?
How big do it need to be?
Ask the lady right here. Raise your hand, Tracy.
Okay.
She will tell you.
Very good. Thank you very much for being with us and your patience this afternoon. Okay. And any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Yeah.
Yes. That takes us to 14C9.
We're gonna find out what a zebu is.
I wasn't the only one to ask that question, what a zebu was.
It's a type of a cow.
Kenway Rocker Grow
Ooh,
Services
it's
again.
not. I mean, you guys had to pronounce this right. You guys are just terrible.
All right, we're gonna carry on. And can you give us the correct
lions.
pronunciation of that?
They meant zebra and they spelled it.
I think it's a zebu.
You're my man today, man. You are killing it, Ken.
It's a cow.
I love it.
It's a miniature cow. They're pretty cool looking.
I love it.
Okay.
This guy's
You
awesome.
get like a couple of them in your house.
Okay.
Snake.
190714 SU. The applicant is James J. and Corinne C. Heaton. The request is for 1 horse, 2 donkeys, 4 goats, 2 zebu, 2 hogs, 10 hens, 9 rabbits, and R1 for 4-H activities. The location is in Rolling Hills Subdivision Unit 2, and it's 2.32 acres. The land use is rural. Here's a site plan that you saw. It's the large 1.25 acre pasture has finally been seeded and showing grass. The applicant currently has a 4-H exemption and can go through the process of renewing. They keep the animals there they lead the 4-H and they keep the animals there for the students that can't have the animals, from my understanding, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong. And the area is rural in nature and sparsely developed. And under the rural land use, the intention is for agriculture, residential, and conservation. So animals on rural land, it's consistent with the comp plan.
Thanks
Planning
for
is
pointing
on-
that out again, Ken, for Commissioner Bryant.
Planning and zoning is recommended approval, and the staff is recommending approval with the following conditions, and the applicant is here.
Okay, very good. Could we have the applicant come forward, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rob Betzel, 1531 Southeast 36th Avenue, Ocala, Florida, 34471. I know it's late in the day. I'll be brief. My clients, the Heatons, and their daughter are here in attendance today. They lead, as co-leaders, the Denellen Elementary 4-H program. They have about 20 to 24 members at any given time. The animals at their farm are there for the children to come interact with so that they don't grow up and have the same type of hostility toward cows as Ken here, and to make sure that they appreciate cows when they grow up.
Is that a zebu?
Yeah, the zebu are the miniature, and actually the goats are miniatures as well. So they're a good size for the kids to go on site, interact with. The problem with the current 4-H exemption is it's really intended for, a student who's a member of their club to participate in these activities at their own location. So this is more of a continuing use. we agree certainly with all the staff recommendations. The Heatons have devoted their volunteer time to teaching the kids how to properly take care of animals, so they're very proud of the job they do in that respect, and I'm certain we'll be very good stewards of all these conditions. One thing that I would ask, and I sprung this on Sam prior to the meeting, I would ask for one administrative renewal if possible. These are volunteers who are club leaders. They've had to hire me and sit through a few meetings, and they've enjoyed that, but I would love for them to eliminate
that
that
pro
from their
bono
future.
for the 4-H? Wow.
Easy now, easy. But anyway, if it's possible for staff to ensure that they're doing a good job and renew this administratively at least one time, I'd appreciate that. They have an 11-year-old daughter, so they will anticipate leading 4-H for at least another 6 or 7 years until she moves on.
Question, and probably for staff, how long can we extend the administrative review?
Typically, they're in 5-year periods, and up to 3 times is what the typical administrative renewals language has been.
So it's one time with, how many times with a 5-year?
One time, 5 years for 3 times.
On the conditions here, we have three consecutive times maybe renewed administratively for up to 5 years.
So that would be a total of
It's fine.
20 years?
15.
15 through
So
the
one time
administrative.
plus 3 renewals?
Correct.
How old is their daughter?
11.
11.
Well, so her
They only need
kids,
10 years.
no, so when she has kids,
Okay, so, and how, what's the
Whatever.
timeline here that's being,
The expiration would be
Currently
July
5 years.
16, 2022.
okay, and
You
we,
can do 1, 2, or 3 administrative renewal of 5 years.
so that's what the request is.
And frankly, to eliminate the number of renewals, so they have to pay $700 each time for the renewal, if we could extend it to 5 years and just do one renewal, I think that would satisfy them so that you're not spread out over the course of 20 years and they can save a $700 fee in the meantime.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so 5 years with one
Well,
renewal
we
at
gave
the
you a really good
end.
rate, man. He's killing us
10
here.
years.
Well, I mean, think about
I agree.
the reason they're doing it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve. No,
Well,
we gotta do public
let's
comment,
do some
I'm
public
sorry.
comment.
Thank you.
Do we have
Thank you,
anyone
Commissioner
in
Gold,
the
for the early
audience
motion.
who wishes to speak on this matter? Mr. Morgan?
Bob Morgan, 11003 Southwest 128th Avenue. And I happen to live in that development, so Denellen 34432. I just would like to say that I'm in full support
Good.
of this.
Waiting for you just to knock out the Zebu. Terrible day.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Anyone else in the audience? If not, we'll close public comment.
back to his
I'll
motion.
make the motion.
And second.
So I've got a motion by Commissioner Gold, second by Commissioner Bryant for 1 5-year term with one administrative
three.
renewal, 3.
3 administrative.
3 administrative renewals,
Correct.
excuse me.
Yeah.
The county
They
administrator.
asked for 1.
Yeah,
They asked
but-
for 1,
but they
but
can
It's
get
I'm giving them 3.
That's fine. You
so
can.
the
If they don't
motion
want it,
is
then
for
they
3.
don't need it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That
I'll
motion
move the
carries.
ordinance.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Bryant for the adoption of the ordinance.
Ordinances, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. At this time, we will continue this meeting until Thursday morning, the 18th of July at 9 a.m.
We need a motion and
Oh,
I
what,
need a
for
motion to
what?
continue.
Okay, motion to continue.
I got a motion by Commissioner Gold to continue to Thursday morning, the 18th at 9 a.m., second by Commissioner Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Concerned?
it's good.
Okay.
What happened to those 2 Las Vegas guys that